We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. We've got piles and piles of questions this week. One from a very surprising guest question asker, so that's going to be a lot of fun when we get to it. And I think Tom ventured out to the movie theater this week, so just all kinds of amazing stuff.
It's been a week.
It has been.
I went to an expo, I guess we'll call it.
Okay.
Kind of like CES, but it's for like electric vehicles and stuff like that.
Nice.
I am not going to talk about it this week. We don't have time.
Yeah, we do not.
We don't have time. But there will be an article coming up probably the day after this podcast goes live.
Okay.
Kind of giving you an overview. The too long didn't read version is... It's basically, as of right now, it's a kind of new. It's called Electrify. It's it's like a place where you can go, like an expo for really consumers and not so much for industry.
Okay.
So it's $20 a ticket to get in for a day, and you only need a day. You don't need 2 days.
Okay.
You go in there for a day, and they'll have e-bikes and like all these different vendors are there showing off. I mean, almost every car company that makes an e-vehicle.
Is it including cars or is it vehicles other than cars?
No, including cars.
Cars.
There's Tesla's not there because they're too fancy. But like everybody from Kia to BMW was there.
Okay.
So you had the full gamut, and there's a little test drive area that you could go and test drive these vehicles.
Cool.
If you wanted to. And there was also Ford had set up I don't want to call it obstacle course, but they had cones up in the middle of this parking lot, and you can get in one of their new Mustang things that look a little bit like an SUV, but not really.
The Mach-E with the very prolonged hatchback. Yeah, I get it. More wagon style almost.
It is. It's a very strange looking car. It's not necessarily my style, but hey, it's maybe not geared for me. But they had a professional driver in it.
Oh, okay.
So you sat next to them, and they tore around this thing, man. You could hear the screeching of wheels. They had like a pallet of tires on the side because they were going to go through some tires that weekend. It was pretty cool. So it'll be coming. It's all over the country. It's like
so it's
Colorado,
like a traveling
California
exposition.
Yeah,
sort of
it's all over the United States, and it's like $20 a ticket for the day. I think if you buy 4 tickets, like a family ticket thing, it's like $15 a ticket, so it's cheap to get in. And then there's e-bikes, e-scooters, e-motorcycles. There was like an e-skateboard that you could test ride. There was
anybody doing hoverboards?
There were no hoverboards. I was very disappointed. But check it out. Like I said, I'll have an article. They'll have a link to where you can buy tickets, and also all of the upcoming dates as they are announced as of
And when Tom says there'll be an article, that'll be on avgadgets.com, where Tom is the editor-in-chief, avgadgets.com. And when you say it's called Electrify, is that spelled in any kind of weird way, or is it
it's just Electrify.
It's just the word
the way you think it would be Electric-Fi. I mean, it's not like an F-I at the end. It's just Electrify.
I mean, you have to ask, because these days you never know. Things can be spelled with, missing vowels or all kinds of weird things for SEO reasons, but there you go.
Very cool.
Okay.
Very cool. I don't want to talk about it. We got too much stuff to talk about.
We do.
What did you watch?
Okay, jumping right into it. I watched one movie this week, which was Poor Things, which, of course, won a whole bunch of Oscars.
That looks so freaking cool. It looks really cool.
I could say oodles about Poor Things. I'll restrain myself a little bit. This is a provocative movie. This is a movie that through the main character plants a flag in the ground, takes a stand, and says, "Hey, audience, you react to this. I'm not going to move, you move." That's what this movie is about, and it is there to provoke you, whether you have positive reactions to Bella, the main character played by Emma Stone, whether you have positive reactions, negative reactions, whether you think she's a hero and a champion, whether you think she's awful and you want to change her, whatever it is, you're going to have a reaction, or at least I certainly had a reaction, and I don't see how anybody who allows themselves to engage with this movie in any sort of way wouldn't have a reaction, and that is very much the point. It is there to provoke you. It is art in that sense of this is art meant to provoke you and to elicit reaction and to get a response from you, and it absolutely does, and is tremendously successful in doing that. If you are very uncomfortable with things that are there to provoke you, then you will probably not enjoy this movie and you will not like these characters. Mark Ruffalo is sort of the main co-star in this. He is fantastic. The physical acting, the physical comedy done by both Mark Ruffalo and Emma Stone, tremendous stuff from the pair of them. So much of it is in the physicality as much as what they're saying that, it takes skilled actors who really know how to use their bodies as instruments to pull off what they did, and really can't praise that highly enough. The imagery in this movie is over the top. The backgrounds are like, I don't know if it's CG or if they used matte paintings in some places or whatever, but everything is heightened. The colors are vivid. You want to watch this movie in HDR and wide color because it absolutely makes use of it, even though there are portions of this movie in black and white. Also on the technical side of things, another 1.66 to 1 aspect ratio in this movie. So a little bit narrower than your HD TV 1.78 16:9 aspect ratio. There are little pillar boxes on the left and right. So again, I still see people say, I want my CinemaScope screen. I'm like, that is a whole bunch of blank space on either side if you're doing that. So I found that kind of interesting. The score in this movie, very noticeable, very odd, dissonant sounds that are going on, very much complements all of the sort of emotional reactions that you might be having to everything that you're watching. So this is a movie that is unapologetic in talking about philosophy and making it very clear that what you are watching are metaphors and characters who are there to act as personifications of particular philosophical viewpoints. They are less real life people than they are personifications of ideas. There have been criticisms because this is an adaptation of a book, and I would very much call it inspired by, as opposed to a direct adaptation of the book, because people who are big fans of the books, or of the book Poor Things, they've been critical that basically everything to do with Scotland, other than a light Scottish accent from Willem Dafoe, has been removed from this, and that was like the point of the book. The point of the book was a criticism of Scottish hierarchy and aristocracy and all of those sorts of things. And while this certainly comments on high society, it is a completely different tale. It takes the characters, but the book focused on Mr. McCandles. He was the main character. Obviously, the movie completely focuses on Bella, Emma Stone's character. They've changed that. They've changed the point of it. They've changed the setting. They've changed the time. So it is very much inspired by the book and using the names of the characters in the book, but not retelling the book at all. So if that's what you're hoping for, then it's not going to be that. But I have to give it a hearty thumbs up, with the caveat that you very well might feel uncomfortable watching this movie. People have commented on, yes, there is graphic nudity, there are prolonged sex scenes, so if you don't want anything to do with that, be forewarned. A lot of it is played for comedy, as far as that goes. It's a highly unapologetic movie, not particularly realistic, but it's not meant to be. And then on the whole philosophy side of things, I was a bit surprised because I've read several reviews about it, and I didn't see anyone make the comparison to Ayn Rand, which was the first philosophical, the objectivism that Ayn Rand talks about in her writing, is the first thing I thought of watching this movie. Not that it's exactly objectivism, but that was the thing it reminded me the most of, and I've been quite surprised to not see anyone else, at least in the reviews that I've read so far, make that comparison. I'm not sure what was going on there, but I've always felt that Ayn Rand was kind of awful and kind of like, I don't agree with her philosophy at all, and I always thought that her philosophy only works for the one person who's behaving the way that she says you should behave if nobody else changes.
Nobody else gets to behave that way.
Nobody else gets to behave that way, and that is very much what this movie is.
Because if not, it's basically just war. Yeah, basically. Well, I mean, the two people who are behaving that way go immediately into conflict.
And it's just pure selfishness, and the only way that it works is if everyone else stays the way they are, and the one person gets to behave that way. So that's why I thought this movie very much reminded me of that type of philosophy. I always thought that was a kind of dumb philosophy. I've never really agreed with it, which made me at the end of this movie go, that was kind of stupid, but not like the movie was stupid, just that the notion, the end point that we get to, I'm like, yeah, no, that wouldn't actually work, at least in my opinion. But yeah, like I say, I could go on and on about it, but that's it. I'll stop there because Tom watched something that he's got to talk about, and here we go.
Yep. So I went to the movies.
You did?
For the first time with a friend of mine, and we saw Dune 2. Now, we were both very concerned about the whole fact that it's almost 3 hours long.
It is.
We didn't. We were like doing that whole Run P app, trying to figure out when we were going to go and stuff like that. So, because, I mean, it's a long movie, and at home I tend to have to at least pause the movie once to go to the bathroom. That movie, like Rob said when he reviewed it, flew by.
It does not make you sit there and feel like it is 3 hours. Absolutely not.
So it is absolutely, so it's so much shorter feeling than the first movie. It's not even funny.
Right.
Everything you've heard about the people who love it, who are just over the moon about it, are correct. It's a very good movie.
Okay.
It's very engaging.
Yes.
I have read all the books. Yes. I have read even most of the bad ones, which are the son and whoever the heck he wrote them with, Sanderson, I think, maybe, books that they wrote afterwards. I've read most of those as well, and own quite a few of them until I got wise and started getting them from the library when I figured out how bad they were. But I was buying them to begin with because I am such a huge Dune fan. It's softening a bit. Of the story, you can see it getting towards the, didn't you say that the daughter didn't play much of a role in this? Was that you that said that? The unborn daughter?
I don't remember saying that.
Okay. So maybe that was somebody else.
Somebody else did. Yeah.
That must be somebody else. Anyways, overall, I've read the book so many times. I know what's going to happen. Nothing comes as a surprise to me. They didn't exactly follow everything. No, there
are definitely some changes,
but good enough. I don't really care. Right. There's some softening there as far as what his original. It's supposed to be a commentary on the whole. In religion, how religion is used, and how prophecy is used, and everything else. And they actually, in some ways, tried to make that more evident, I felt, than the book did.
Okay.
I at least in my recollection, I haven't read the book in
it's sort of directly spoken in the movies, so in that way. Yeah,
quite a bit. Did you remember we said this? Let me say it again for you really quick, just in case. But people still seem to be like, well, that's not what's really going on. He's saving everybody. So we'll see how it'll change going forward, because Paul isn't ever really you kind of root for him because he's the main character.
Sure.
And in the end, he's like rooting against himself. He's trying to, in the books at least. The one thing that they did do that I was surprised at, if I will, is the Harkonnens are in the book so much more overtly evil than they are in the movie.
Yeah, they're like monstrous.
They are.
Whereas here they're sort of believable as human beings of a sort.
Yeah, they have more of a I want to say Game of Thrones-ish feeling to them, whereas in the books they're just like you're absolutely typical tyrant style who has no boundaries ever placed on them for anything, and any desire, anything they want.
I mean, the David Lynch Dune kind of got that feel.
You got that. You got a little closer. If you saw the David Lynch part, you got a little closer to it. But I mean, in the books, it's like it's real bad. So if you like the movie and you go back and read the book, you might be like, ooh.
Okay.
So, but I mean, the colors, like you said, I mean, it's a lot of how they made everything black and white for the Harkonnens, and then it's all brown and stuff for the Atreides and for the Fremen. It's very interesting. I mean, I think the movie's very good, and I don't think anybody needs me to tell them that.
Now, what sort of theatrical experience did you have?
IMAX, which was hilarious.
You did go IMAX, okay.
It was hilarious because all of Reddit can literally just jump off the nearest cliff as far as I'm concerned with your you have to have your surrounds directly to your sides and you have to have your speakers exactly in these locations. I walk into this IMAX theater, there's a big stupid screen, right, which is curved,
there's a
of
very
course.
big screen.
Massive screen. And then there's 2 surround speakers, one in each rear corner that are like
corners? That's typical for IMAX.
The size of like 2 of the closets in my house, just shoved, just massive speakers.
They are sizable. When they say that the surrounds in IMAX are full range, when you see them, you can believe that. Those could actually be playing some bass. That would make sense.
So they were, and we were sitting slightly more to the right than to the left, and it was just so very obvious that I was closer to the right rear speaker.
Okay.
So, and yes, Reddit guy who goes around correcting people that there are no, if you only have a 5.1 system or 5 point however many system, that it's not called a rear, it's called a surround. It's a rear. It was behind me. Shut up. It was behind me. Shut up. And you know what I never thought? Oh, well, there's no sound coming from my side right now because there's no side surround speakers. Shut up. It was fine. At 5.1, you can put the speaker over there. It's fine. Talk about speakers. Can you see that?
Okay,
hold on. Upside down? Is it upside down?
Let me. I didn't know we were doing this. Okay,
there you go.
Tom's got it in his face. Okay. Oh, okay. Fosse Audio. Look at that.
So my wife was like, "Did you order an amplifier?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that." I'm like, "Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. It's fine." It's still in the box.
Not tremendously expensive.
It's like $60. Don't worry about it.
There you go.
All right, let's get to this podcast. Yeah. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Come to our website, find our show notes, our Flickr album, so you can follow along with the pictures that we are looking at and talking about and commenting on, so you can also see them. I guess show notes and old episodes, anything you want to see. The audio's there if you want to click on it there.
Yep.
Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant, where the pictures will be embedded in the video, and our lips will be desynced because...
Yup, it never works out right.
High production value.
That's right.
We used to be we used to care more about that. We used to record our video separately and then put it together.
There was all that.
And then we just said, that's
Who has the time?
Who's
not I. Not I.
Not Rob.
No.
And Tom has neither the time nor the inclination. So, if you want to contact us directly, Rob at avrant.com. His socials is at First Reflect. Socials are at First. At First. I don't know. It's one of those.
Social media handle, whatever service I'm on, that'll be me.
It's hard to say socials is.
Yes.
It's too many sounds. You can reach me at tom@avrant.com.
Okay.
Thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, go to support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, clicking the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and leaving us a PayPal donation. So we want to thank Tyler and Steven for doing that this week. Thank you very much, Tyler and Steven.
For sure. Tyler and Steven, thank you for your PayPal donations. We very much appreciate your financial support.
I did not get enough drinks. I said I was getting beverages. I got beverage.
Okay.
I got beverage in it. I was so hurried trying to get back here so we can start the podcast. We also want to thank our patrons over at patreon.com. Patrons are people who sign up to become a monthly contributor to the podcast. Every month, Patreon takes some money from you and gives most of it to us. So we have 132 patrons this week, including John. So thank you very much to all of our patrons.
That's right. That's patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 132 patrons this week. John, thank you for being one of them.
All right. We got some notes of gratitude for... Oh, I'm sorry. We also, if you can't support us financially, do something to support us, and we will mention you here. Aaron had some, I guess, one more Canadian movie code for Rob to check, just in case, just to see if it worked or not.
That's how it goes. When he finds one, he has me check it. So thank you very much, Aaron. Appreciate it.
We got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going through...
whatever might come our way week to week.
What has been the Electrify Expo 2024 Orlando? I guess that's what it was. Aaron, Karl and E, for what it's worth, they really enjoy our movie reviews at the start of each episode. It could be its own show, they say. Tom and Rob movie reviews podcast, perhaps. Maybe that's what it will be at the 1,000 mark.
When we run out of questions, we'll just stretch that section extra long.
Jay, who's a member of the 2 Hour Plus Club. Bo, Dan, Jorge, who's glad the FCC is updating the definition of broadband to be a minimum of 100 megabits per second down, 20 megabits per second up.
It's pretty low by today's standards. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, they didn't really they set that bar easy to cross.
Should be.
Stephen and Adam, thank you to all of you for thanking us.
That's right. I'll say those names one more time. Aaron, Karl, and E, Jay, Bo, Dan, Jorge, Stephen, and Adam. Thank you all so much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. They're very much appreciated. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
How many names start with E? There just can't be that many. I feel like we could figure this out.
We'll call people by whatever handle they want to go by. I've got no problem with that.
So their name. I don't care what they want to be. If they want to be called E, I'll call them E.
That's right.
I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. In the news, HSU made some waves this week by announcing their new VTF-TN1 flagship 15-inch subwoofer. Replaces the VTF-15H MK2, which had been out of stock and unavailable for a while, and now we know why.
Mm-hmm.
They had buried it in the backyard, and now it's dead. The VTF-TN1... That's too many letters for a subwoofer. Can I just say that? It should have fewer letters. Yes. VTF-TN1.
No, VTF is the variable tuning frequency. TN is coming from Tom Dussain. They're borrowing one of his designs, and then it's the one. That's a pretty short name, Tom. You're getting awfully picky.
I don't know. I think it should be a maximum of 3 letters. Then the number that indicates the size of the driver, and then you can put another letter after.
So you were fine with the VTF-15H. That was okay by you.
That was fine.
This one,
added
too
the Mark
many letters
II on it. I got mad at them,
and
now I'm mad because it's TN. And now that I know that it's even named after somebody, I like it less. Anyways, the VTF-TN1, I guess it should be 15, uses the same 15-inch driver and the same 600-watt, 2,000-watt peak amplifier as the now discontinued VTF-15H MK2. The changes are all in the cabinet, and the price. Let's not bury the lead here. The TN1 is cheaper. $1,200 plus $100 or $99 shipping versus $1,250 plus shipping for the 15H MK2. That also means the TN1 is undercutting its closest competition in the monolith M15 V2. Which I also don't like because I don't like V2s. $1,500 shipped, and Tone Winner SWD 6,000, which is $1,400 shipped.
So those are very similar 15-inch subs with very similar sort of specs and output. But this means that Shoe is coming in, about $100 less, because if we are including shipping in that price, then once this goes to its regular price point, it'll be at $1,300 shipped, at least within the 48 contiguous United States. And they're doing it again, coming in as being the value leader for a high output subwoofer.
There we go. We like that. Mm-hmm. The HSU started off with pre-orders at $100 off, which sold out in 8 hours. So now they've extended the pre-order window. Now at $50 off. Next time it'll be $1 if you put down a non-refundable $200 deposit. So
that's right.
What changes were made to the cabinet? It got taller and slimmer, which I do like.
I knew Tom would like that.
It now has a square footprint of 18.5 by 18.5, but it's 29.5 inches tall.
Yep.
That's pretty big. Which HSU is marketing as being a great height to act as a stand for bookshelf speakers.
Yep. They sell
the 15-inch driver faces forward, but the dual flared ports are now fired downward, which is actually... I like.
It makes a whole lot of sense. It makes all the
This
sense.
design allows for slightly longer port tubes inside with no bends, and that means slightly lower port tuning and extension. The grill is now just a circle that covers the 15-inch driver, so it looks like a PA speaker. I haven't seen this picture yet. And there's only that one finish option, satin black, which is paint, not veneer.
Yes. Might be one way that they brought the price down just a touch.
Yeah, so they painted the MDF?
They painted the MDF?
Just straight painted it? That's interesting. I have to see the pictures. I'll have to click on this in a second.
I mean, it's a black box, Tom. It's pretty easy.
I understand, but I wanted to see, like, with the... I would be curious as to how the corners finish and stuff like this. MDF is...
Yeah.
not
It is
super
rounded
attractive.
corners, thank goodness. It's not going to completely take the skin off your knee if you bump into the edge of the corner. They are a little bit rounded, a little bit radiused, but other than that, it is a black box, very much.
Compared to the outgoing VTF-15 Mark II, the frequency response is more linear, but that actually means slightly lower output from around 35 to 65 hertz or so, because there's no bump there. That's what linear means. But higher output at 20 hertz and lower, which I don't care about. Being a variable tuning frequency design, you can run it with both ports open, one port plugged, or fully sealed. Both ports open is the max output mode, and in CEA 2010 testing, it's 3 dB louder at 20 hertz than the 15H Mark II, which is quite a significant difference for just having changed the cabinet and port design. In max extension, one port plugged mode, the TN1 gets a passing result at 12.5 hertz for all the bass you can't hear or feel for the first time from HSU.
That's right.
And 16 hertz output is significantly louder in either output mode. The slight downside is that there's still no fully variable phase control, just a 180 degree polarity switch. There's no app, so you have to use controls in the back of the sub to make any adjustments like a peasant.
That's right.
And it weighs 85 freaking pounds.
It does.
So be prepared.
Yes.
Let me click on this thing. But
Okay.
I don't hate this.
Oh, gosh, no. There is plenty to like here. I think these are very reasonable, well thought through design choices. Clearly, having the taller height is not going to work for literally every situation. Shu made sure to mention that you can lay this subwoofer down on its side. That is absolutely no problem. So if you need it to have a bigger footprint but a shorter height, you can just lay it down on its side and that'll take care of those dimensions. Honestly, the dimensions of this thing are not wildly different than the VTF-15H Mark II that it replaces. They've just changed, which side is longer. So instead of it being very, very deep and not as tall, it is now taller and has a square footprint when it's just standing on the feet that come with it.
They gave this they did a pretty good job with the corners, it looks like. Because
looks nice.
MDF, just like when you cut it, it's very spongy looking on the inside. So they had to seal it in some way to make it look this good. The flat surfaces are usually okay, but the corners can look pretty bad. So they did a pretty good job with this. I like this. Is there a picture with the grill on? Did I miss the picture with the grill on? Is this
it's in there. It's just a circle. It's just a little circle. Or a pretty big circle, actually. It's like a 16-inch diameter
It does have
circle.
that PA look to it, though.
I mean, if that were like way smaller, it could be like a monitor speaker.
I know, really. You need to put a quarter next to it for size. They probably did, but you just can't see it because it's so small.
Or a banana. A banana, as the internet likes so much.
I like it, on the website. It looks like it's $200 because it.
Oh, right. That's
it just says pre-order deposit $200,
right.
And then small print underneath it says $11.49.
Well, I mean that's just at the moment. Once this thing goes on sale for real, then it'll be different.
I like this. I like everything about this.
This is going to be a recommendation coming from us for sure. No question about it. Yes, the measurements that were shown were provided by Shu themselves, but they have always proven in the past to be very accurate with the measurements that they take. CEA 2010 is a pretty standardized way of taking measurements. They do list their CEA figures in reference to the microphone being 1 meter away from the driver instead of 2 meters away. So if you are comparing it to other ones that were measured with the mic 2 meters away, subtract 9 decibels from these figures.
You haven't been to AV Gadgets this morning, have you?
Oh, that explanation? You got that up there?
No. You haven't. Oh, where is it? How come it's not here? Uh-oh. I might have. That's why. Hold on a second. Go ahead. Keep talking.
Yes. In any event, this will certainly be one that we're going to heartily recommend for people who are looking for quite a lot of output, deep bass extension without breaking the bank. This is going to be the one that does that. So I think the looks are reasonable. I can absolutely live without an app. The only times you have to adjust things on the back are once or twice. And then since it doesn't have fully variable phase, you're going to need another way of doing that anyway if you're doing the adjusting the phase for dual subwoofer setup. So
I'm so mad at myself.
Okay.
I scheduled it for PM instead of AM.
That'll do it.
So we're going to talk about this right now.
Okay.
And then I'm going to refer us to AV Gadgets. I clicked so many links open. Okay. In the news, still, Sofabaton has released an update to their hub-based X1 universal remote called the X1S. The MSRP is $230, but they're selling it for $190 at launch, with an additional 10% off coupon via Amazon or 15% off with AV Gadgets promo code, which you can find by following this link. But we already got a review in for a review unit, and Andrew finished the review, and it's published currently right now on AV Gadgets.
Okay.
I scheduled it for 7 p.m. instead of 7 a.m. because I am an idiot.
Well, that was it. I mean, I saw the announcement one post on AV Gadgets when I was writing up the topic list. I didn't see the review posted.
Yes, I just published it.
It wasn't my fault.
Oh, my God. So just for this is the title, in case you're wondering. In case you're wondering how mad Reddit's going to be at us, Sofabaton X1S is the harmony killer.
It doesn't have to kill it. It was already killed.
It was dead.
It's the replacement.
The interface, all the problems that they were, and we'll talk about that. You can go read the review, and maybe we'll have Andrew on to talk about it next week or the week after or something like that. All the problems with the setup and adding your stuff and doing your activities and all that stuff, all been solved. All of it. It's infinitely easier, and in some ways, Andrew prefers it to how Harmony does things. Okay. That's how much he likes it. The only thing he can find bad to say about it is it still doesn't really work right with Philips Hue lights.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So
that's the one thing.
Outwardly,
anyways, let me go ahead and read this thing. But yes, go read the review at AV Gadgets. He got it immediately. They shipped it to him overnight, and then he started the review and was just blown away. So you'll see pictures of the app, the screen or whatever. Maybe there's an app. I don't remember.
There is.
Anyways, at first glance, nothing about the hardware design has visibly changed compared to the original X1, but there are some notable improvements. First and foremost, it now has a rise to wake function, so it has a accelerometer in it. So no more having to press a button to wake up the 2-inch OLED screen or the backlighting for the buttons. The backlighting is also improved. They're also using a new, better-looking typeface on the screen. Andrew from AV Gadgets, that's what we just talked about, has a review sample in hand, which is now published.
Okay.
And let us know that it feels better too. On paper, the functionality remains the same, so maybe it's all in the newest firmware. But the connection between the remote and the hub seems rock solid now, which was a common complaint from users of the original X1. Activities work reliably without a hitch now. Andrew says they are Harmony good. It still lacks smart home integration and features as compared to what Harmony had. It can connect to a Hue light system, which it really could not before, but it can only do basic controls, not the Hue scenes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change this from now to not. Not. But overall, Andrew finds it to be a definite improvement, and he says it's an easier recommendation now with a viable replacement for a Harmony remote, as long as you aren't trying to do a bunch of home automation and smart home stuff with it.
Yeah.
He loves it. He's
great.
Over the moon. So he will continue to use it for a while. He's been used. The thing is he's got a Harmony remote, but he's been using the Sofabaton.
Yeah, the X1. Yeah.
The X1 this whole time. Like, he has not stopped using it. So he updated that his original review, like, for a year, for a full year. He updated every couple of months as they made changes. But now this second iteration of this remote finally is to the point where
he's like,
even Reddit's
going
to have to
this
agree.
Thing now. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Even Reddit's going to have to say it's good.
So the X1S, that's the way to go. It's worth the like $10 or $20 more than the outgoing X1 as that's being cleared out. And that'll be the one to get. Hooray!
Yeah. Comments from listeners. Nathan heard us talk last week about DSPeaker anti-mode for automatically EQing a sub or two. He's used one in the past, so he thought he'd chime in. He used to have a Yamaha receiver with the old version of Wipeout that didn't EQ anything below 63 hertz or whatever
I'm pretty sure it was 63 hertz. Yeah, that rings a bell.
He has used a mini DSP. He had used or was using a mini DSP to manually EQ the bass and has taken measurements with Room EQ Wizard. The anti-mode delivered results that are basically on par, and it was indeed faster and easier to use. But now that he has receivers with better built-in room correction, they are also just as good. Yeah. So he agrees with what we said. There can be cases where the anti-mode is useful, but if you already have a good room correction program, it really isn't necessary or really even better. So there you go. If you have an old receiver and you want room correction, but you don't want to upgrade your receiver because you don't need any of the other stuff, this is maybe a solution for you.
Well, yeah, and I mean, for someone who doesn't want to have to deal with it manually, for someone who doesn't want to have to input...
And I think that's a perfectly valid reason to
very much so. Yes.
The manual doing of the room EQ, there's a reason we made it automatic, because it sucks.
And yeah, if you're doing a stereo setup, you're using a stereo preamp or stereo receiver that doesn't have room correction or doesn't have bass management, it is going to be helpful. So I absolutely feel like there are cases where this is useful. I have no problem with it. I was quite impressed by the manual and its complete lack of BS and its on the nose and correct understanding and description of the way bass works in rooms. I was like, yeah, I've got a thumbs up for it. But if you've got an advanced AV receiver with good room correction in it that goes all the way down into the bass, then it isn't going to do something magical. It is not a multi-sub optimizer. Be very clear about that. It is not a multi-sub optimizer. So getting uniform bass from your multiple subwoofers, that's on you to achieve first, and then it can give you good equalization results, very similar to the room correction built into most AV receivers. So that's where we are with that, and I'm happy to hear from someone who has actually used the thing for real themselves.
Okay. Steven talked about the hum that started in one of his subwoofers after he recently did some rewiring for his Velodyne SMS-1. He discovered simply moving the SMS-1's power cable, which was just a thin 12-volt style connection, away from the subwoofer RCA cable, got rid of the hum. Mm-hmm. So he speculated it might have been an improperly shielded RCA cable, and he thinks we hit the nail on the head. I hate to break it to you, but we knew we had, but thank you for confirming. The room was built 20 years ago, and an installer ran subwoofer cables in the walls. Oh, he was so nice. It does appear the cable itself is not coax, and it doesn't have a shield. Good guess on our part. And since we gushed a bit about the SMS-1, he loves it and even picked up a spare off eBay in case his current one ever dies. For anyone interested, he wrote up a blog post about it and compared it to the Behringer Feedback Destroyer. So we'll include his link at stephenmacmillan.com. So we've got
we'll have a link to his blog. Happy to share.
Joe Kluznik figured he would share the final results from another of his recently completed theater installations for an assisted living project. He says he was able to get involved earlier in the process this time, which is usually not the case. They kind of call you in afterwards and say, this stuff doesn't work. Can you fix it? Like, no, what have you done? And that allowed him to advise him on room dimensions and wall constructions. So the theater walls are structurally separated and have double drywall. There are ramps and railings to make it easier for residents using walkers and mobility aids. And they went with Irwin luxury seating. The clients didn't want huge subwoofers because they never do. They just don't tell them they're subwoofers. Tell them they're bookshelf stands, I guess. That's what we're saying now. And one of them is visually hidden as possible, so they went with 4 SBS SB1000s. The ones up front are hidden within the cabinets. Given the size of the room and the budget, they went with Klipsch reference Premier speakers all around, with the Denon X3800H powering everything. Joe always uses Mid-Atlantic equipment racks with AC affinity cooling, and he was able to get a hold of an APC J15 and a Logitech. Where did he get that? I think those things still exist.
He found one.
And a Logitech Harmony Hub-based remote. Hey, did you hear about the new Sofabaton?
That's coming up.
Sources are a Panasonic UB420 Ultra HD Blu-ray player and an Apple TV 4K. All the wires and cables are monoprice. The screen is a 120-inch silver ticket, and the projector is an Epson 4010. He went through Gix panel options with them, and it was as much about looks as it was about performance. So they chose the Impression Series panels, 12 of them with a pattern on the front that they liked, because who cares? It doesn't really do anything anyways. Seating, lighting, and the popcorn maker had their own separate budget, because they're fine having a stupid popcorn maker in here, but God help them if they see a subwoofer.
That's right.
But all of this theater gear, including the panels, came in under $15,000. It performs very nicely indeed, if he does say so himself. Look at this.
It is
this
beautiful.
Is nice.
I mean, would you not be happy to watch a movie in this theater? And yeah, I mean, I love the choices of equipment.
The seating is nice, man.
Jeez, nice the seating, and I love that. Yeah, you've got the ramps and the rails, tremendously important in this setup. Yeah, the acoustic treatments, look really nice. I mean, nobody's going to walk in and go, oh, that's any sort of eyesore. Just these things hanging on the wall. It's like it adds to the decor. You've got this, very movie themed carpet throughout the entire thing with stars and reels and all of that type of stuff. So yeah, beautiful setup, wonderful work, Joe, and happy that many of the products that we recommend so frequently have found an installation like this that I'm sure the residents are going to enjoy tremendously.
Screen's too small though.
There are limits to what the 4010 can do. You don't want to go too nuts, Tom. Don't want to go too nuts.
This is gorgeous. This is a really good job, my
Love
man.
it.
You did a good job. You did a good job. Gurinder was just excited to share the progress he's finally made on his basement home theater reconstruction, or construction, not reconstruction. The final finish, black velvet on the walls and ceiling, still needs to go up, but the soundproofing upgrades are done, and he's super happy to report that they have been a success. He watched Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning with his wife and cousin, stayed up past midnight, and his parents upstairs said they didn't even know they were watching a movie. So that was perfect. Mm-hmm. If someone is walking with hard shoes upstairs, they can still hear some footfall in the theater, but that was expected, and he feels like he should have bought a lottery ticket because all 11 speakers worked without any issues on the very first try. Better than me.
That's
I had to rewire like 3 times. He forgot to tell Audyssey to only output to a single sub, even though he's physically using 2 subs, but intended it to be in mono. But that can be fixed after the black velvet gets installed. So far, so good. And it's fun to have a functional home theater again. I feel you, my man.
Indeed. Yes. Happy to share that wonderful news. We have been following along with Gurinder's changes to his basement home theater. It didn't used to be enclosed. It used to just be open to the rest of the basement. He constructed a wall. And he's like, well, if I'm constructing a wall, I might as well get it to the soundproofing of the ceiling and those types of things at the same time. So it's been a long project. It's taken longer than he had originally anticipated. None of that is shocking to Tom or I. We know how those things go. But yes, he's very happy to have something functioning. It all works. And once he gets that black velvet up, he'll be done. So congratulations.
So yes, it's hard to know how much of a difference these things are going to make when you're doing it. So when I put my solid core door up, I was like, I don't know. I do think it's made a difference. Like watching Oppenheimer, having my wife watch Oppenheimer in here, and then me and being in another room. I mean, I remember the kids watching movies and it disrupting conversation.
Okay, yeah.
Not fully disrupting, but you had to talk a little bit louder, and that wasn't the case when they were watching Oppenheimer. And I'm the one who controlled the volume. I got it up to minus 10. So I mean, I think Oppenheimer at minus 10 in most places will blow you out of your seat. Dan. So these questions. We're on to the questions. Dan has an open concept room. The living room is 15 by 18, but it's open to the kitchen and dining area and hallway, and there are vaulted 14-foot ceilings. So infinity.
It's all open. It's the house.
He's using 5 DefTech Mythos speakers plus a pair of Snap AV episode signature in-ceiling speakers as top middles. This sound like whenever I see this combination, I always think this was sold to you by the person who made the house, who built the house. I don't know why. It seems like that's how that kind of goes, but maybe not. So he sets those to small with an 80 hertz crossover and into his pair of Velodyne DT10 Plus subs. On paper,
which are very good subs, but not big enough for this size of space. However, the likelihood you want to actually pressurize the entire house is pretty
I don't know there's anything big enough for this size of space. On paper, the DefTech speakers have a pretty high sensitivity in the 92-93 dB range, so he's just been using the Marantz SR5014 to power everything. He says he's gotten lazy and he pretty much has been streaming everything. It's what most of us do. My man, I hate to break it to you. It's not lazy. It's where everything is. But one day he decided to put up his Sony Ultra HD Blu-ray player to use, and he fired up Pacific Rim Uprising on disc. He also has the original copy in iTunes, and it's available on Netflix. So he did a comparison. iTunes and Netflix sounded about the same, but the disc version had way more dynamic range, which is what you expect. Yeah. He's tried doing some comparison in smaller rooms in the past, and he's agreed with us that external amps don't usually make a notable difference, but in this wide-open room, he was curious, so he connected a 2-channel amp, 125 watts per channel, to his front left and right speakers. He did not rerun Audyssey. He just adjusted the trim level by ear until his front left and right speakers seemed to match the center. Then he played Pacific Rim Uprising again. He wouldn't say the quality or the character of the sound changed at all, but the dynamic range seemed definitely to increase even further. I mean, I think we can all identify some problems with the methodology here without going much further, but let's go on. The Marantz all on its own certainly didn't sound bad, even by comparison, but having that extra amplifier power made a noticeable change in this instance and seemed to fly in the face of our theories, which are not theories. But he hadn't expected to hear any difference at all. He doesn't want to tumble down the rabbit hole, but you can see how easy it would be to do so if his 125-watt 2-channel amp made this difference. Why not get a 5-channel amp or a 7-channel, since only a bit more than the 5-channel, which is how I ended up with a 2-channel amp, because I started with 2-channel, got myself all the way down to 11, and then went, I can afford this. What am I talking about?
That's right.
Went back to 2-channel. He says we rock, but we might rock even more with some external amplification. But might we rock even more with some external amplification in the mix? No. I mean, the level matching is like step one of many of making sure that you're eliminating as much bias as possible when you're doing these sorts of things.
There can definitely be have been an objective, measurable difference there that went wasn't addressed in the
I have
particular
a real hard
test
time when somebody's listening to content and saying that they're hearing me personally.
Okay.
I've listened to content and I've like A-B speakers that are sitting right next to us, and there's a switch. You know what I mean? Like the immediate switch that you can do between the two speakers that is with very little or no delay. And and if the differences are not dramatic, you spend the whole time going, I think I hear something. I think I hear something. I'm not really sure. Go back and forth. Maybe this one, maybe that one. And that's between two different speakers. Mm-hmm. So if the differences are not dramatic, everybody's just sitting there kind of staring at the wall, trying to hear something that probably really doesn't exist or exist enough to really matter. So without level matching, without, any of the other things that, because I don't know what amp he's using. Is that amp as linear as the amps that are inside the Marantz?
I mean, that I wouldn't be terribly concerned about, but
I wouldn't either. But it's still something to consider.
Sure, but that aside, it's a concern or criticism about the testing methodology or lack thereof. That aside. Yeah, I think this is maybe a case of overgeneralization because, of course, it's sort of like I'm inferring here that he's like, oh, Tom and Rob basically say that external amplification is never needed. We don't say that. That's not our stance. We can mathematically get to a situation where external amplification is needed, and when it is, we'll say that's when it's needed. The room that you have definitely could be an instance where external amplification.
Did I just not show an amp I bought? I thought I just showed an amp that I bought.
So I think that's maybe a little bit of internet, everything is a 1 or a 10 and there's nowhere in between. A bit of a lack of nuance there because, we're not the people saying never get an external amp. We're saying you're not going to benefit from an external amp in many situations. Most converted bedroom, normal size living room that isn't open to the rest of the house, that type of thing. What we're against is the blanket claim that whatever you have, whatever your setup is, whatever your room size, whatever your listing distance, whatever speakers you're using, adding an external amplifier is going to be an upgrade. That we speak against. Because it just isn't true. It isn't the case that no matter what's going on, you add an external amp and it's going to be an upgrade to your sound. Saying that isn't always the case is not the same as saying an external amplifier is never going to make an audible difference. There's a wide range in between all or nothing, which seems to sort of be what is going on here. So you're in a completely open space. You could definitely end up using more wattage than a Marantz 5015 is able to supply in the base to some DefTech speakers. You could absolutely get to the case where that Marantz has run out of wattage. If you are playing all 5 speakers simultaneously, it's rare that they're actually playing all exactly the same thing and truly being an all channels driven, but you can get to the place where, that Marantz, if it's all channels driven, tops out at like 30, 40 watts per channel when all channels are being used simultaneously, identically. The rated 90 or 100 watts or whatever they say per channel, that's 2 channels driven. That's not 5 channels driven. So could a genuine 2-channel times 125 watts be delivering 3, 4, 5 more decibels of headroom? Absolutely. Mathematically, it absolutely could. And that could very much be in the upper bass region that is very, very audible in a wide open space like this. So it could be the case that you really did have more dynamic range. 3, 4, 5 decibels of additional headroom is absolutely audible, and it's completely within the realm of possibility that in the setting that you have, you really did have like 4 more decibels of headroom available to you. So I'm not going to say that there's no way you should have heard a difference. Yeah, you absolutely could have heard a difference in that scenario, but we would also go back to the testing methodology as well. We'd want to make sure those really were level matched. So I think that addresses everything that was going on there.
James in the UK. James has 2 Denon X6200W receivers, one in his home theater and one in the living room. It's an old enough model that has Audyssey Multi-Q XT32, but does not support the editor app. It also does not support Dolby Vision or HLG when it was first released, only HDR10, but thankfully Dolby updated it, or supported it with updates, and they added Dolby Vision and HLG. In the UK, the BBC uses HLG, so that was a very welcome update, but out in the living room, which is larger and more open, he prefers the way things sound after running Audyssey. But in the home theater, which is a converted small bedroom, he's never been fully happy with the results after running Audyssey. He's tried many times to carefully follow the best practices for microphone placement. Did you read my article? I hope so. But the end, all results always seem to sound less dynamic and somewhat muddy. He's never been able to really figure out why. But the real fly in the ointment for him is that he and his wife really prefer to be able to use Audyssey dynamic volume.
Which could definitely explain the less dynamics. Because that is exactly what it does, is reduce the dynamics. The muddy, I'm not sure. But
I don't know about the muddy, but the less dynamics, if you turn on dynamic volume,
that would be,
it's not making you have more dynamics. It
should sound less dynamic, otherwise it's not doing its job.
So his wife finds full reference volume far too loud, so even in the home theater, the listening level is kept to -12 or -15, which I think is a reasonable level for many things, especially streaming. And in the living room, dynamic volume does a nice job of evening out the lows and highs so that the voices remain easy to understand, but sudden explosions or loud music scenes don't become bothersome. So is there a way to have dynamic volume without having Audyssey room correction? He wants to have the features of dynamic volume in the theater, but not the muddy sound or loss of dynamics. The loss of dynamics is what you're literally asking for.
Right.
It's what you just described. You described the loss of dynamics. The bass does not... The explosions don't get too loud.
That's right.
That is
quiet things are made a bit louder. Loud things are made quieter.
I don't think dynamics. I don't think he's using the word correctly.
That is very common. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly what he's asking here, but he always seems to get. He doesn't. He wants the features of dynamic volume in the theater, which I don't know what those features are that he wants, but not the muddy sound and loss of dynamics that he always seems to get in the home theater when the Audyssey is on. So what can he do? So a lot of times when you run Audyssey and you don't like the results afterwards, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is go seat to seat.
Yes.
First of all, follow the microphone placement thing. I'll link up the article.
Well, I mean, even before microphone placement, there's definitely things that could be going on here because we don't have all the details about exactly what his theater setup is.
Yes.
And there are multiple reasons. So first of all, on the dynamics thing. So if we're actually talking what the word dynamics literally means dictionary definition, then we are talking about, quiet versus loud. And if you are activating Audyssey dynamic volume, you have intentionally lessened the range between the quietest thing and the loudest thing. If you want to have a greater dynamic range in your theater, then you need to turn dynamic volume off, which you can do independently of dynamic EQ. Dynamic EQ is the thing that says when I turn my master volume down to -12 or -15, it's going to apply some variable equalization to make sure that all sounds remain audible, that everything remains above the threshold of audibility, which a lot of the very deepest bass, if you turn your master volume down to -15, it would just fall below the threshold of audibility. You just wouldn't hear it anymore. It would still be playing. It would be playing the same 15 decibels quieter as all the other sounds, but you wouldn't be able to hear it because we're so bad, our human ears, at hearing deep, deep bass. Dynamic EQ brings that back up to at least the threshold of audibility, and that might be the thing that you really want, as opposed to dynamic volume, which is shrinking the range between the quietest thing and the loudest thing. So that's a settings change that you can play with for no money and would absolutely be worth your while. The other thing is there are at least two Audyssey target curves, one being Audyssey reference, or sometimes called Audyssey movie. I forget what it was in the 6200W, but it'll either be called Audyssey reference or Audyssey movie. And then there is either flat, or it was sometimes called Audyssey music, but there will be at least those two target curves. And if you're finding some mightiness in the upper treble, well, the reference curve or the movie curve does have a high frequency roll-off as part of the target, whereas the flat or music curve, which is quite often better suited to small rooms, that just keeps it flat. So if it's some treble roll-off, it might just be that you need to change to the other target curve. But typically when we're saying things sound muddier, that is a result of masking from bass. And if what you have done is set up a single subwoofer in this small room where you're guaranteed to have peaks and nulls, and then you've maybe done a close cluster of microphone placements that have EQ'd what it can in the main seat, but the other seats actually got worse than they were to begin with. You could easily end up in the situation where, you're getting some bloat and you're getting some masking effects from the bass. Like maybe there's a null in your room. In fact, we would expect there to be a null in your room, even if this is a dual subwoofer setup, but you put both subs at the front of the room, like so many people do. We would expect there to be a null. Audyssey is going to attempt to boost those frequencies. It will try to do that to some extent. It's not smart enough in the way that we would do automation, where it doesn't ever attempt to fill in a null or a partial cancellation. It will put in a boost in the signal at that point, and that could definitely lead to masking effects going on in the lower vocal range, which could lead to that muddy effect. So this could very much be a case where what you really need to address first is your subwoofer placement. If you don't have two subwoofers across the room from each other in that small theater, that's going to be step number one to get better uniformity. That will allow Audyssey to do a better job of equalizing the bass, which will remove some of the masking effects and eliminate a lot of that muddiness in the sound. That would be my guess anyway.
Yeah, so we're guessing, unfortunately,
well,
here.
Bit, but
so
educated
James,
guessing.
Let's just say that you haven't. We don't know enough about your system to really make any sort of.
But this is pretty common stuff. So these are like the common reasons why it happens.
Well, one of the things I find most often, especially with when people are like, I like my living room setup better than my home theater setup, and I go and look at their home theater setup, and their home theater setup has just literally as many speakers as they can shoehorn into a room. So they've gone from like, okay, I want the full theater experience.
That's
I want the full audio experience. So they've got a smaller room and they've shoehorned 11.4, or like 9.4.4 in there.
Yeah.
And it's, or 7.4.4, something like that. And they've just got speakers everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're all too close to each other.
Right.
So I don't know what you mean by muddy. And a lot
the
of
other
times,
thing, he said it's a converted bedroom. There's every possibility their seat is right up against the wall.
Yeah.
And you have nothing absorptive behind your heads. That can absolutely lead to dialogue intelligibility issues. And, muddy sound can mean all sorts of things to different people. But if you're just saying, I find it easier to understand the voices in the living room than I do in the theater, why is that the case? If your seat's right against the back wall and you have nothing absorptive behind your heads, that can just be a very strong reflection off the wall behind you that is making dialogue intelligibility worse. So that could be another thing that Audyssey can't fix that. Audyssey can't stop that reflection from happening. It's a physical thing that's going to take place. It can make the sound coming out of the speaker louder or quieter, but it's not going to stop the reflection that happens. So the only thing you could do there would be to put some absorption behind your head, which you can try for free. If you have a bed blanket, just fold it up a bit, put it behind your head. If that helps, then it's the back wall reflection that's causing the issues, not Audyssey's fault.
Yeah. So, like Rob said, for me, I find that people who prefer their living room setups or their other setups, they have fewer speakers in there, but they're better placed, essentially. So when you don't have all these speakers on top of each other and your couch has got a little room behind it, like Rob was talking about, you put all this together and things, while there's not as many speakers there, things feel like they're where they're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Like sounds in the space feel like they're where they're supposed to be. Even though there's not an overhead speaker, sounds still sound enough like they're overhead that it's not distracting to have two speakers trying to play sounds so close together, but are slightly different sounds, and it becomes muddy. So I am, that would be my guess. Is that
we can absolutely think of and explain many reasons why you're having this experience that like Audyssey, like it's not your fault for thinking that Audyssey is supposed to do more than it does because it's marketed that way, right? It's the name they call it is room correction, and the marketing about fix the sound and all of this, the automated process. People think it does a lot more than it does. It's just automated equalization. That's all it is. So if you have other problems that equalization cannot fix, then Audyssey can't fix those things.
Yeah. Do both of us still buy Ultra HD Blu-ray and or regular Blu-ray discs? He's found he only buys classics and the movies he knows he's going to watch over and over. At this point, streaming is not good enough. I mean, streaming is good enough to keep him content for everything else. How about us? Yeah, that's what I do.
You do mostly streaming.
I do.
Do you ever buy any Ultra HD Blu-rays or
I do.
Blu-rays?
I do it all the time. I buy Ultra. Okay. I buy it constantly. But I do it for movies that I think I've talked about this before. I too often look at somebody's wall of movies, and if I see a movie in there that I know is straight garbage, I'm like,
You judge them.
I judge them.
Okay.
It's sort of like the book people who will look at your bookshelf and go, why do you have that trashy romance novel up there? And you could like it, and there's nothing wrong with you liking it. But
also, people often have things that they just haven't gone back through for years and eliminated the things they don't need anymore, because it's harder to get rid of stuff, and it takes time. I buy a lot fewer discs than I used to at this point, because, I absolutely watch streaming for a lot of things. There is a ton of content I know I'm only going to watch once. Am I really going to buy it on disc these days to do that when I don't get... If I find something where I'm like, yep, I'm going to want to be able to either watch this entire thing over and over or just select scenes that I want to be able to use to demos, then that's what I'll get on disc, and it's a lot fewer than it used to be. But I do still buy discs on the regular, just not as many as I once did.
Yeah, I mean, my wife asked me because I have the new Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse whatever movie.
Across the Spider-Verse?
The new
Hooray!
On my... Don't get hooray yet. Oh. On my Amazon wish list, or on my Amazon cart, she's like, am I supposed to be buying this? I'm like, no, I'm waiting for it to go. It's $24. I'm waiting for it to go on sale. And then when it goes on sale, I'll buy it.
Or Father's Day present that's going to a few months away.
Yeah. My kids do not care about Father's Day. They barely like their father as it is. They're certainly not going to buy him anything. But yes, I do buy discs from time to time. Patrick asks, what do we recommend for cleaning the screen of an OLED TV? His wife's cats, they are strictly her cats, whenever they misbehave, decided to jump up onto a center speaker and then touch their noses on the LG OLED screen.
Yeah.
Should you use a microfiber cloth? Is it safe to use water or a particular cleaning solution? It's not... Yeah, a microfiber cloth, if that does it, I think you're done.
Okay.
But, it's just normal glass, right? That's up there. It's just like a normal piece of...
It is.
Whatever.
Sometimes
Same thing for your eyeglasses.
Yes, eyeglasses. That is the safest thing. Getting an eyeglasses cleaning kit if you don't already have eyeglasses, because I of course already have that, and that's what I use if there ever is a smudge on my TV screen. You want to make sure it is a lint-free, very soft microfiber cloth, because there are of course the uber cheap microfiber cloths that they say they're microfiber, but when you actually use them on something, they leave little particles behind, or they can cause a scratch. Don't get that. Get something, a quality microfiber cloth, or one that comes in a kit that's for cleaning eyeglasses. And if you do need some sort of cleaning solution, then what you use for eyeglasses is safe and works. There's the Koala brand that's easy to get for $10, a whole kit of 2 spray bottles and very good high quality Japanese made microfiber cleaning cloths on Amazon. So that's an easy way to go, and that'll work on any TV screen and be very, very safe. Yes.
Dazz is back with a little more info and to double check what we say he should buy for his new living room setup. The stone around the fireplace really is stone, not just a fascia or fake stone look. So still hire a professional or mount the TV DIY. There's no world in... You're asking the wrong person for me.
Okay.
I'm not mounting it. That's all there is to it. I think that I am a Google search and a couple of articles away from thinking I can do it myself or being absolutely convinced that I cannot.
Okay.
So... Yeah, I just don't know how much this costs. I just don't think it should cost that much, but I may be very wrong.
I don't know. For me, impact drilling into masonry, all the kind of dust and the potentially cracking a stone and all that type of stuff, when
I hung my screen last, I had to put 3 holes because I kept getting it wrong.
Yeah.
I just don't see me doing this right the first go.
If you don't already have an impact driver with a masonry bit, just the cost of getting that, I think, is going to be very similar to just hiring someone to do it. So I would just hire somebody to do that. This isn't some crazy ongoing project that needs to be done as a one-time installation. I would just hire somebody to do it. But if you're very comfortable and you already have the equipment, then you can do it yourself. It'd be weird.
If he was very comfortable and already had the equipment,
would he be asking?
He'd be asking
I know.
us.
That's what I mean. Yeah. I just hire somebody.
So no. Is what we're saying.
Right.
So he likes the recommendation for the Marantz Slimline receiver from Accessories for Less. He likes that that even the older, less expensive model still supports HDMI 2.1, at least on a single input, and has pre-outs for the front, left, and right channels. He has zero intention of expanding to surround sound. In the living room, this will be a 2-channel setup.
Okay.
This whole household are bassaholics. So he's going to have subwooferage. He knows there's really no way to get ideal bass in the living room, and it's open to other parts of the house. It has very high ceilings. There isn't much latitude for moving or removing any furniture. So what would we recommend on the subwoofer side of things? Do you have a couple of 18.5 by 18.5 spots on your ground?
Right.
Because that's what I'm now going to recommend.
That makes a heck of a lot of sense. Yeah, we'd be...
But honestly, it doesn't look like he does. If you look around the perimeter of this room, every square inch is already taken up.
A little bit, yeah.
You have high ceilings.
He does.
While you're gotten that guy over or gal over to hang your TV, maybe hang a couple of subwoofers from the ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of cost and reasonable footprint, yeah, those brand new VTF-TN1s from HSU seem like a very possible solution here. Of course, we're going to mention the cylinders. Honestly, for the amount of open space that he has mentioned in the past, like the PC4000s would be a perfectly reasonable choice. They are not going to have too much output capability, but of course the price starts going up when you get into that. PC2000 Pros are not going to pressurize your entire house, but they're also going to be able to have a lot more output and extension than a lot of other things that would fit into the same footprint. So I think it's in that range. I would either go with SVS cylinders because, again, you can lay those cylinders on their side, so having it go behind the couch or something like that is maybe a possibility. They are probably the smallest footprint that you can get when they're standing up, being a 16.5-inch circle diameter. So yeah, I think I'd either go cylinders in here, which again, when it is a little bit more of a crowded space, maybe they are close to a walkway. Anybody who's brushing by a cylinder is not going to have any sort of problem. There's no knocking your knee into it because it's round. It is covered in industrial carpet, so it's relatively soft. But if none of that works, if the cylinder form factor or just the price point doesn't make sense, then yeah, love those new TN1s from HSU. That's an opportune recommendation.
He has zero intention to use tower speakers in here. He's slightly intrigued by the self-powered bookshelf idea, though. He could probably live without room correction. The Marantz Slimline would only be multi-EQ anyway, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's correct. Not XT, not XT32. Regular multi-EQ.
Maybe you can get one of those things we were talking about.
Oh, the anti-mode?
Anti-mode, there you go. So just a pair of self-powered speakers with a subwoofer out plus a line level in and a phono preamp for his turntable could get the job done. He's just more familiar with using a receiver, so he kind of likes the idea of being able to change passive bookshelf speakers if he wants to. So what's our opinion on what his final decision should be? I don't care. At this point, I don't think that... Okay, you are super setting yourself up for disappointment in this room, I'm going to be honest with you. You're not going to get enough bass. You're not going to be able to fit the subwoofers unless there's a bunch of room I'm not seeing in these pictures, like that you can move things around.
Right.
You're not going to be able to put subwoofers in here. You need to just lower your expectations of get two. Fine, get the Marantz Slimline and a couple of horn-loaded speakers.
Yeah.
And call it a day.
Yeah.
Or.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking go all HSU here because honestly, get the bigger model of the HSU horn-loaded speaker, so the HC1, which of course they market as the center speaker, but it says right there, yes, you can absolutely use them vertically. The HC1s, just turn them vertical, and they work just as well as a pair of larger bookshelf speakers. You're gonna want to have that, down to 80 hertz output. You're gonna need the woofer size of having the dual woofers in there as opposed to the HB1. So I would get a pair of HC1s. I'd get a pair of TN1 subwoofers, buy it all from HSU at a pretty reasonable price, and I think that's a very good way to go. Yeah, I mean, going with these self-powered speakers, it is somewhat more limiting in the sense that if you replace anything, you replace everything, right?
Yeah.
It's all together in one. If you buy them and discover that you do need something capable of playing louder, there's no swapping out just the speakers as everything goes all kit and caboodle. So I think it makes more sense if you're already more comfortable with a separate receiver and speaker setup, then you're going to have all the capabilities that you want, and it's all going to be there. And the price is still completely reasonable and comparable to getting adequately powered, self-powered speakers for this scenario anyway. So there you go. Go all HSU, get that Marantz Slimline. I think you're done.
Yeah, and then just forget the subwoofers, honestly. I know that you want them, but I really think you should just go with regular TV in here and a little bit better sound.
Really?
And
you can get some pretty decent subwooferage.
I'm not saying he can't. I don't think he has got any place to put them.
Okay.
So what's the point? you're going to start moving furniture around that you don't want to move and then fight with it. It's just not worth it. All right. Next question comes from Tom, which is me.
It is. It's our special guest question asker.
So my wife and I were watching TV on our projector, as we always do.
Yeah.
Which is an Epson 60 something. I don't remember what it is. It's
40,
old.
Isn't it? Isn't yours a 40?
It's very
Or is it
old,
a 30?
Yeah. It might be a 20. It's very old.
Oh, okay.
What it is.
It's before the whole 4K and HDR capabilities anyway.
Very far before that. I'm gonna actually look up what it is. But basically, we were watching Epson. Let me see if I just do this. Will it show me?
Nope. I don't know.
Nope. Nope.
It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter. Anyways, I'll find it later. Anyways, it's a 60-something, I think, is what it is.
And it is not HDR,
black.
and it is
black.
not 4K.
It's 1080p. It was hand-me-down from Clint when he upgraded. So it was old when I got it.
Oh, that might be a 20 then. Yeah, he had a 6020, so it might be a 6020.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
It could be.
So it's a very old projector. And I've been putting bulbs in it, and I told my wife that the last bulb I put in it, which was before COVID, I wasn't putting another bulb in it. I was done. Yep. That was the end of that. And we would get a TV afterwards. Well, we were watching TV and we're watching YouTube, and it was like an international track meet that we tend to watch. We put it on in the background as we're talking, and we like our kids do pole vault and run meets and stuff. So we like watching it, and we don't have to pay super close attention to it. And half of the picture got distorted. Well, this particular track meet I've been watching, they've been having all kind of video issues. So I was like, oh, this sucks. Like, this is a terrible stream. We should watch something else. And I backed out of it and went, but it's still there.
And it's
on the menu,
straight down the middle. It is a straight line down the middle. We've had a listener of AVRant write into us before with pretty much this exact same problem, this exact same look. Line right down the middle, the left-hand side, all garbled up, the right-hand side still looking normal.
You can still watch it. I mean, it's visible. You can see what's happening. It's just kind of got this weird green matrix. I want
to watch a movie this way.
No, you would not. But I'm perfectly fine watching YouTube, though.
Okay.
It sucks, but it is what it is. We've been very busy. I had my car break down. I had to get a new car. Our refrigerator is currently broken. This weekend, we ordered a new refrigerator.
Oh, no.
We have got some stuff. This was not number one on our list of things to deal with. So I did. Hey, I've been doing this for a lot of years. So the first thing I thought was, this is not a bulb issue. I know that. This is almost certainly the panel.
Yeah.
But it could be the input. I know it could be the input. So I switched from HDMI 1 to HDMI 2 on the Epson, and it was like, no, it's still messed up. I'm like, crap. So then I switched back, and I was like, well, let's try a different source. See if maybe the input on the AV receiver is bad. Well, nope, that's not it either. And then, of course, I took the plug out and plugged it into a straight flat panel that I have lying around here.
Okay.
And that also, that was fine. So it's clearly the projector.
It's the projector.
The projector is the issue. And then I texted the picture to Rob, and he's like, that's broken. I'm like, thank you, sir. Very helpful.
I was more specific than that. I said that looks like a panel issue.
Yes. Which is code is Canadian for that's broken and you screwed. So my wife looked at me and said, "Is this the day you've been waiting for?" I was like, "I mean, no, not but yes, exactly. This is the day I've been waiting for." So I told you guys we went to the Electrify Expo this weekend. And on the way back, I was like, okay, we're trapped in this car in traffic, in Orlando traffic, which
was
is
that the new car? Were you in the new car?
I was in the new car.
There you go. At least
Honda CRV from 2015, new to me. Very happy with it, by the way, so far. I've driven it only a couple hundred miles, but it's fine. So I was like, we're trapped in the car. Let's talk about TVs. And she's like, okay. So we should have recorded it because it was a perfect example of really good questions that people would ask about the kind of decision I'm making right here. So I have a 92-inch screen right now.
Yes.
Projection screen. And she's like, why aren't we getting another projector? And so I had to break down the whole how screen sizes and field of view and all of that stuff works. And then explain, like, listen, for the amount of money that you're going to spend to get a projector of a minimum quality, right? Of the minimum quality that I'm willing to accept, and that she, whether she knows it or not, is also willing to accept, because she's been places and seen TVs and go, that doesn't look right. I'm like, exactly. So that she's willing to accept. We're going to spend $5,000 to $7,000 on a JVC.
Oh, okay.
More than likely.
Okay. Wow.
I mean, I technically we could get an Epson 5050 UB, but I don't want a 5050
or
UB.
you could get a LS 11,000, something in that range, which is more like $4,000.
But still, right? You could get a flat panel with an OLED flat panel.
You sure can.
That can give you a similar, if not exactly the same field of view, simply by moving it into the room a foot or so, and spend less.
Yeah, I mean, one of the easy rules of thumbs is, like, if you have a 75-inch TV, then if you brought that a foot closer to your eyes, you've got the same field of view as an 85-inch TV.
Yeah.
Like, for every 10 inches in diagonal screen size, that's basically a foot distance from eyes to screen. It's not always exactly precise, but rule of thumb, it's very, very close. And the other one is, like, if you have a 75-inch TV, if you sit 6.5 feet from it, that gives you a 45-degree field of view. If you have an 85-inch TV, if you sit 7.5 feet from it, it gives you a 45-degree field of view. Yeah. So basically subtract 10 from the diagonal size and divide by 10, and that's the feet that you have for a 45-degree field of view. So Tom's sitting 92 inches, effectively 90 inches, 8 feet away is Tom's eyes to screen distance. That's a 45-degree field of view, right? 90 minus 10 divided by 10 puts you in feet. So if he wants to keep that same 45-degree field of view, then if you had, say, an 83-inch OLED, you basically move that a foot closer, eyes to screen, than the 92-inch screen, very, very similar, and you'll have the same field of view.
Right. So I texted Rob right away, and he's like, yeah, it's broken. And so then we started talking about exactly what we're talking about right here. So basically, I have, the options. Of course, I'm looking at OLED. I've been talking about it for years. I'm only looking at OLED.
Said you would get nothing less.
I'm not gonna
mess about with local
parents,
dimming.
And the thing I told my wife last night, my parents, I was at their house. They're using a Samsung plasma that I told them to buy because it was, of the quality that I think that people deserve. They bought that as a 56-inch Samsung plasma. They spent like $2,400 on it, $2,600 on it. 14 years ago.
That's right.
I'm sorry, 16 years ago. We did the math. 16 years I've been using that TV. It still looks great.
Yes.
Still looks great. And when we buy, whatever we buy, is it going to last 16 years? Who knows? I don't know. But I know one thing, it's still going to look great for as long as
my parents' C6 OLED, so that was 2016.
Yeah.
Right? That's now 7 years or 8, almost 8 years ago, getting towards 8 years, 7.5 years ago now. My parents still comment almost every time I'm over of how gorgeous that OLED TV looks. So it's like, yeah, you can get your value out of it.
Yeah. So like we went to Sam's and we were looking at the C3s, which is what we always recommend here.
Yes.
They have the 83 for $3,500.
Yep, that's the going price.
And they have the 77 for
23, 22, somewhere in that range.
Yeah,
23 is the going price right now.
23. And we're looking at them. I mean, they're right next to each other. Like one's above the other one. And when you're kind of like looking at it from an angle, like, oh, they look about the same. But you get straight on and you look at how much overlap there is between the two. It's pretty significant.
Yeah.
So,
like that 1 foot of difference.
But then right next to it is an 86-inch LCD from somebody I don't know, whatever, for $1,000. I'm like, how does somebody look at these two TVs and then look at that one and not buy the $1,000 one? You know what I mean?
You look at what's selling on Amazon, and of course, that's what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't tell in the store the difference. You don't see the cloudy screen. You don't see the edge lighting. You don't see the blooming and everything else that's on it. So I can totally understand how people get to where they're going to go. So really, I think those are the two models we're really looking at. We also talked about the Samsung.
So it's just a screen size difference, 77 or 83, and of course it's the price that's making you wonder.
So the $3,500 83, it has to come a foot off the wall, which is what's going to happen if you put it on a piece of furniture anyway.
That's very doable without really even noticing a thing.
Yeah, but the 77 has to come 2 feet, basically, into the room.
I will tell you, like firsthand experience, people are sometimes like, okay, yeah, Rob, you chose the 77 purposefully over the 83-inch. It wasn't a money thing. It was you purposely made the choice. I cannot sit any farther away from my TV in my little den in my theater than 6.5 feet. And personally, I don't like when I have to move my eyes or my head to take in the edges of the screen. But I would absolutely prefer, if my room were any larger, to have the 83-inch and sit at 7.5 feet versus 6.5 feet. It is a very noticeable, like physiologically different feeling to be just 7.5 feet from my screen versus 6.5. 6.5 feels close. It honestly does. Yeah. I have to do it. I'm okay with doing it, but it feels too close. 7.5 feet, even though it's only 1 foot difference, it literally feels different, and I would prefer it.
Yeah. So, we're kind of going back and forth on it. Like Rob said, it's very hard. And when we talk about subwoofers, we're always talking about building a box. It's very hard to envision what it feels like sitting 6.5 versus 7.5 feet away from a TV.
Sounds like such a small difference. It
sounds like a small difference. It sounds like it's totally doable, but at the same time, you don't really know how that's going to feel. You also don't know how it's going to look in your room, as far as the furniture sitting a little bit further away from the wall and all of that. So there is some considerations there for us. The other thing that she's concerned about is we're probably only going to be in this house for another 5 years.
Okay.
And we expect the TV to last longer than that.
Yep.
So when we move, what will happen to the TV? Because a 77-inch TV versus an 83-inch TV, as far as physically moving them, that goes. That we don't care about that part of it. That we'll deal with that when it comes. But we will be moving to a smaller house, which means the TV may or may not have its own room like it does now. And if it does, it may be a smaller room than we have right now, maybe bigger. I don't know. And so the thought process is, it's going to end up in a living room. And if it does, then we're going to want the bigger one because it gives us the ability to maybe cheat the seats a little bit further back and still have a decent field of view. Or we may end up in a living room that's so big and the seats only make sense so far away that we're going to want a bigger TV anyways. We may go back to a projector, or TVs may have lowered in price as far as their size. So we're thinking we're going to have to up it. So now the 83-inch has got to find someplace else to live. We're certainly not going to throw it away. Especially we spent $3,500 on it. So can you put an 83-inch in a bedroom? I mean, come on.
You can.
Not really. You can. You shouldn't. And you probably wouldn't want to.
They're very thin.
That's not about thinness. It's about wall space and, having it like light up the entire room and everything else. So the 77-inch would be easier to transport into a bedroom if we needed to do that. We have no idea what our future holds. So we're kind of looking for something to break that tie.
Okay.
If you will. So what Rob just said about how close you sit to the screen on the 77-inch to get that field of view is probably what's going to break the tie for us.
And also, follow your own advice, Tom. Get the thing you honestly want. Because you don't know the future.
That's why I'm not really looking at
maybe you don't move for 7 or 8 years. That's a possibility, right? It's not out of the realm of possibility. And it's like when you don't know exactly what the future is, you don't know what the future room is yet. No guarantees. Exactly. Get the thing you really want.
So the question is, so one of these does not support Dolby Vision, correct?
The Samsung. So I mentioned the Samsung S89C because if you are going with a 77-inch, it's the best deal out there. $1,900 it was down to, so that's $400 cheaper than the 77-inch C3, obviously cheaper than the 83-inch. The S89C is only available in a 77-inch size, but it's a very, very nice quantum dot OLED television, 77 inches at the lowest price. It just doesn't have Dolby Vision.
Yeah. So I don't really care that much about Dolby Vision. Sure. I told my wife that. I've said it on this podcast
I wouldn't let
quite
that
a bit.
Be a deciding factor.
That to me does not matter. No. I'm like, we never mentioned the words 4K.
Oh, well, they're going to be.
It never came up. Your words refresh rate never came up because we didn't care about that. We talked about HDR. We talked about Dolby Vision and how I didn't really care that much about it. And we talked about size and contrast because those were the things I really cared about. So that's sort of the. So the other question that I have is the one of the ways that you mount this is essentially you get a universal stand.
Yes.
Which is what it basically mounts like you're mounting it on the wall, but it mounts onto a stand, which sits underneath it.
Yeah.
And then it allows you to raise it up enough so
Yes.
that you can put your center channel underneath.
That's right. Yeah, because the stand that comes with those TVs, you are not fitting an SVS Ultra Center beneath the bottom edge of the TV if you just use the stand that comes in the box.
So the question I have is, can I do that with any stand? Any of those stands that are rated for? I mean,
all
the
that
TV
matters is the weight.
80 pounds.
Yeah, all that matters is the weight. Because the ones that say like, oh, this is up to a 75-inch TV, and you're like, can I put an 83-inch on it? Yeah, you absolutely can, as long as it's under the weight limit, which is almost universally 99 pounds, unless it's a heavy-duty unit. So any of the 83-inch OLEDs will work. I like the ones from Pearlsmith from Amazon. They are height adjustable. They swivel, 30 degrees to left, 30 degrees to the right. So if you do need to swivel it at all, nice sturdy stands. $50. So I don't think that's breaking the bank if you go with that completely reasonable. Also, like if you do go with the C3 OLED, do be aware that the mounting holes on the back are like towards the bottom of the TV because all the electronics are built into the bottom. So that's where the little bulge is, and that's where the VESA mounts are as well. So you have to work out exactly where you're going to mount it on the VESA mount for the universal TV stand, and then that impacts, which of the 3 rungs that you hang it on for the adjustable height, and then you have the correct distance between the bottom of the TV and the center speaker. So I would 100% go with one of those. There are still the 3-in-1 stands. There are some that the going one on Amazon for the brand seems to be Roland Star now, which I never heard about before, but they're perfectly reasonable looking and under $200 for a nice 3-in-1 stand. So it's got like the equipment stand that's there normal, and then it has a stock on the back instead of actually hanging it on the wall, as a a pillar that's holding onto the VESA mount at the top there. So that's an option too.
Yeah, so that one right there that you're talking about, where is it? There
like
it is.
A 3-in-1 stand, the Roland Star.
Yeah, the 3-in-1 stands would work okay.
Sure.
As long as the center channel fits inside of it.
Well, it doesn't have to fit inside. It goes on that top shelf, and then the TV.
Well, the thing is right now my center channel is 13 inches off the ground. That's how.
But you'd want it a bit higher when you're transitioning to a smaller and a flat panel. So
yeah,
you can go higher than 13 inches.
Yeah.
The Roland Stars, that top shelf is 20 inches off the ground. So I think that's very reasonable.
That would be fine.
Yeah.
That would
or actually,
be okay.
19 and a half inches off the ground is where that top shelf is on those. So it's a very nice design.
Why is it glow blue?
That's an option. That it doesn't have to. There's lighting built in because everybody needs their RGB lighting these days. You don't have to plug it in and turn on that lighting.
Which one are you looking at here? I'm trying to figure out which one.
There's the 3.
You linked up the link that you have in here.
Oh, it doesn't work? Okay.
Sends me to like a whole bunch of them. Like the whole, okay. the whole Roland Star thing.
Yeah. Well, I'll send you a specific one after one. Yeah,
we'll do it later. Yeah. So I'm sharing this story because I already knew all these things, basically.
Sure.
What we're talking about here. I'm sharing this story because this is how my wife and I got to the point where she understood why it was that I wanted.
And why you might be spending $3,500, which is a good chunk of change. But like you say, to get a projector that you'd be happy with would cost that much or more.
Yes.
And then what I'm telling you is if you get the 83-inch and you put it in your current room, you're going to be like, looks fantastic. Love it. You get the 77-inch and there's a very good possibility you're going to be like, it's a little bit small. Just a little bit. Like, it's not unwatchable by any means. I can certainly watch a movie on this and have a nice experience, but it's a little bit small. Or, to get the field of view I really want, I have to sit a little bit uncomfortably close to it. I'm a little bit uncomfortably close to my TV in my home theater. I would love to be a foot farther away. It just isn't happening because I can't move the wall. So, that's the way it is.
I will tell you that my wife's initial after we had this whole discussion, she was like, I'm leaning towards the bigger TV.
Yay.
So, and I was like, really? Because I'm leaning towards the smaller one.
Well, I mean, if it's all about price, like that S89C, if it's all about price, then it's like, that's a fantastic deal, right? So I would never be mad at somebody for making that choice, but I'm following your advice, get what you really want.
And I think that's the advice that you should be following. This
also,
open box
you go over to Amazon. There are brand new. They're just sold as like new, and it's $3,150 for an 83-inch C3.
I click on that and it doesn't work. It sends me to a $3,500 TV.
Well, you can find it in the the new and used section. There are the ones that are actually used. Then there are the ones that are just like they are completely brand new, but they're just selling it as used so they can lower the price and not be in violation of the map.
And the G2 is not C2 is not on our radar, right? Because it's something. What's wrong with the C2?
There's nothing particularly wrong with the C2. The C3 was kind of nice improvement. There's an 83-inch C2 for less than a C3.
I don't know. What does that say? I think it says $3,000.
I would not think that. Are you sure that's not a 77-inch C2?
I'm going to click on it right now.
Are you sure it's not renewed? Because I wouldn't recommend going with a renewed OLED. Those you'll probably have some terrible banding on.
Oh, I don't know about that. It's C2 Series 83-inch class OLED, Evo Smart, blah, 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 AI powered, blah, blah, blah. It says it's from the LG store.
From the LG store? That's probably renewed.
Oh, well, I'll to figure this out. Anyways, doesn't matter. We will talk about it, him and I. But the idea here is that we've
wasted the whole podcast on this. We've got no time for anything else.
Not a whole podcast. We're on question 6. What are you talking about?
But we got not that much time left.
Adriano in Australia. Adriano is helping a friend put together a new home theater and system. Room and system. He's made a bunch of suggestions. He'd just like for us to double check what he said and offer any additional advice if needed. The room is an enclosed lounge. It's slightly less than 13 feet front to back and not quite 14 feet side to side. The ceiling is 10 feet high and decorated with a central light fixture hanging down and a circular duct towards the right rear side for the air conditioning. Circular duct. Okay.
It's up there, yeah.
I imagine I'm going to scroll down and see some pictures.
There are some images, including a somewhat close-up of that circular duct in the ceiling.
There are 2 small windows on the front wall and about 6.5 feet between them. A door in the middle of the left wall that lets light in has curtains over it and is rarely ever used, but does still need to be accessible if needed. Mm-hmm. I thought you said this was enclosed. Okay,
it is enclosed. Well, doors. There's doors to get in and out. It's just you can close the doors.
Is it a glass door? Oh, it's a glass door. Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's a door with lights in it, windows in it. Yeah.
Okay, I see it now. The entry to the door and the entry door into the room is on the back wall in the rear right corner with a door stop installed. Is that what that says? A door stop?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's got a door stop so that doesn't swing into the wall.
And there's a small gap from the right wall to the back of the door when the door is open. Mm. Everything is a white finish. I mean, this is like white.
Yes.
Except the floor, which is dark brown hardwood. The only seats are an L-shaped couch that is almost right up against the back wall. Adriano's friend has no desire to change the layout of the room. So from eyes to the current 55-inch screen on the wall mount that extends away from the wall a bit is 11 feet. You're not going to get a big enough TV in here, that's for sure. Sources are the TV input, the Apple TV 4K, and that PS5. Construction is brick. Above this room is an attic space, and the bedrooms are on the far side of the house, so Adriano's friend is not concerned about doing an additional soundproofing. And now I'm looking at the pictures. Okay, he doesn't want to move. The L-shaped is not actually against the wall. The L goes into the room next to the door. It makes kind of a hallway.
Lego, the L is next to the door, so that's fine. I'm totally fine with that. I mean, I do absolutely think these seats could come a foot off of that wall without impacting the flow of the room. But yeah, I'm not gonna fight people about how they want to set up their furniture.
Yeah. They discussed a projector setup and considering the seating distance, but Adriano's friend doesn't have any real interest in going that route, and clearly the all-white finish would not be optimal either. I mean, nothing in this room is optimal. The current TV is a 55-inch OLED, and he doesn't want to give up those black levels. Therefore, Adriano is recommending going with 83-inch OLED, which is around $6,100 Australian dollars.
Yeah.
They're hoping when the C3 finally goes on final clearance, the price will get to below $6,000. Any reason to avoid the LG C3 in favor of different OLED models? I mean, you can do the Samsung one that we were talking about, but it's not 83 inches.
Well, it's not 83. No, the Samsung S90C, which is the series that is available in 83-inch size, same price as the C3. So yeah, I don't have any reason to point you away from that. Maybe you're wondering, is the G3 worth even more money? Absolutely not. It doesn't even have MLA, and even if it did, I'm telling you, day-to-day usage, it's not a big enough difference to pay significantly more for the G3. The C4 is supposed to be a tiny bit better like it is every year, but there's no big change happening between the C3 and the C4. So I think the C3 is the absolute butter zone, and an 83-inch makes a lot of sense, price for size that you can get.
So the other consideration would be a 98-inch or 100-inch LCD with full array local dimming. Samsung's Q80C is around $7,000. The TCL C845, which is basically the same as the QM8, is around $6,700. Except that says US dollars.
Oh, that should be awesome. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Just a typo.
Okay. And he's heard the 100-inch Hisense U7K, around 5,300 Aussie dollars, is different from the North American version. Do we know in what way? I don't.
I don't have the absolute specifics for 100% certain, but basically, from everything I could glean, it has fewer local dimming zones than the North American version. So that seems to be most of what it is. It isn't as bright. They don't claim that it outputs as many nits, and that very often means it has fewer local dimming zones as well. So that seems to be the scuttlebutt on what the difference is.
So the 98-inch or the 100-inch would provide a larger field of view, of course, but would it be worth it over the C3 OLED? Plus the 83-inch basically fits perfectly between the two small windows, which when you see these pictures...
Yeah.
Caring at all about those windows is ludicrous to me.
No, but still, just the physical setup of it. I kind of get that.
I think it's silly. While a 98-inch would slightly overlap, and a 100-inch would slightly even more overlap.
Right.
So which way should Adriano's friend go? So here's my question. I guess my question here. He's got some light control in here. I mean, there's always going to be a little bit of light during the day.
Sure.
That's never going to change.
Light will be reflecting around this very white room.
It's going to glow. And not only that, when you turn your TV on, the whole room's going to glow.
It's going to light up.
Which is fine. So those black levels you discussed, you have to ask yourself
honestly, though, OLEDs look blacker even with the lights in the room.
Yes.
Because that black does not wash out, particularly on a C3. That's actually one knock against the S89C, is that when it is brightly lit, the ambient black looks a bit grayer, whereas the C3 OLED, it stays looking inky black. I say... go with the 83-inch OLED if you can afford it. Going from a 55 to an 83, he's not going to be like, oh, too small. Like, it's going to be a big size increase. Aesthetically, it looks perfect between those windows. The performance is going to be everything that you want. I say go with that.
So I don't disagree. I definitely don't disagree with that. If you're really looking for a specific field of view, and the A98 or the 100-inch TV gives you that, I think you can make an argument for doing it.
Sure.
I don't necessarily. I think worrying about it overlapping the windows. I mean, no one's going to be looking at those windows when they walk in this room. They're going to see that big frickin' TV, no matter how big it is, and just go, "Oh, well, hey, isn't that nice that it fits right between those windows?" No one's going to say that.
Okay.
You should always have those windows closed, as far as I'm concerned. Right. Anyways, there's blinds that I can see, so they should always be shut anyway. So who cares if you're overlapping them a little bit? In fact, it's preferable. You're at least blocking some of the light that's coming in, it's bouncing off the back of the TV instead of. So I think you can make an argument. Obviously, I prefer OLEDs over LCDs. I mean, we just talked a lot about that. So I would be okay with you doing. I would understand you wanting to stick with OLEDs.
Yeah.
But I think you can make a case for the bigger TV.
I'm not saying you can't make a case, but I'm factoring it all together, and I'm like, he's okay with an articulating mount, an extending wall mount, so you can get some of the field of view that way if you could go with the 83. And if you are willing to pull that seat 1 foot forward, like, I think it all works out. So I would prefer going with the 83-inch OLED in this instance.
So for acoustically treating the room, first, a large rug is going on the floor. Yeah, that'll make a big difference. Then Adriano has suggested putting absorption panels on the back wall behind the couch.
Yes.
Thumbs up.
A+.
And on the side walls at the first reflection points. Sure, at that point I don't really care.
Like that.
Given the doors on the left is barely ever used, but does need to be accessible if needed. He was thinking they could hang a panel on hooks or use a freestanding panel. What do we think?
Freestanding. Get a freestanding panel. So much easier.
Should he put any panels on the front wall? Yes. You should put panels every space available. They should also be black. just to try to break up
you
this
can
room
definitely get white panels that won't look obtrusive in this room.
Maybe behind the new speakers that will be getting purchased. Is
Yes.
diffusion needed at all? Maybe
No.
combo panels? No. And can we share the link for the DIY panels with artwork printed on them? And
Sure
we
can.
will, because just know that much of that information is outdated. The
And not
Spoonflower
available
stuff.
in Australia, like Spoonflower isn't in Australia. But the general idea behind it, the links to the AVS forum and all the instructions there, those are all still valid. So yes, we'll have that link from avrant.com. It was Rob W., one of our listeners, who wrote all of that up for us. And yeah, I would absolutely go freestanding panel on the left-hand side there. I definitely would put panels as thick as you can, everywhere that you can, on the front wall behind the new speakers as well, for sure. That'll help out with any boundary problems there. And in this room, there's no reason why you would want slightly less reduction of the sound in the treble by putting diffusion only. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So just absorption all around. That's what you do.
Yes. If you like the way the diffusion panels look, knock yourself out.
Yeah, if you like what if you look at
The
GIG,
combo
and GIG
ones.
does ship to Australia, and you like what the Impression series just looks like from an aesthetic point of view, no problem with that. By all means, do that.
Yeah. I will also link up Andrew's DIY acoustic panel tutorial so that you have an other, I guess,
An
designs.
alternative.
Yeah, because the what fabric you put on top is the big difference between the two. So what should the speaker configuration be? Adriano has insisted that 5.2 is the way to go for the bed layer. He's pretty sure we'll agree with that advice. Yes.
Yes,
I mean,
there's
you
no
have to
room for
have-
surround backs.
It's nothing there.
No.
Subwoofers can go in the rear left corner between the couch and the wall, and the front right corner for diagonally opposite placement. Surrounds can get wall mounted on the side walls right up against the back wall, more or less. So they are just slightly behind people's heads, slightly elevated with the door and with the door stop, hopefully safe just behind the door when it opens.
That's doable. Yeah, that's doable.
I suppose. Adriano's friend wants the subs to be relatively compact, which will be fine in this room because it's tiny.
It's not huge.
And they need to have a smaller footprint to fit in the rear left corner. I just think a pair of SVS SB 2000 Pro, could they get away with the 1000? I think you can get away with the 1000 in here. The SB is small, but
I mean, how much does your friend care about 20 hertz extension? Because there is a compromise on the SB 1000s or the 3000 micros. There's a compromise in terms of 20 hertz output. They're more like 25 hertz subs. If the size and the cost savings is more important than 20 hertz extension, which is a completely reasonable thing to choose, SB 1000s you could get away with. If he really wants decent 20 hertz extension, then go for the SB 2000 Pros. That's how I would decide.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. I'm fine with that. I was looking at the pictures. Kef's Q series are currently on sale in their area, so we think a pair of Q350 bookshelves up front with a matching Q650C center, and then either another pair of Q350s for surrounds. I thought he was going in walls.
No.
Is it on walls?
On wall for the surrounds, yeah.
Or the smaller Q150, which are only a bit less expensive during the sale. They are less expensive than the SVS Prime series or the Ultra series on clearance. Plus, Adriano's friend likes the CAF Q series look. Do we agree going with those? That's fine.
Absolutely.
I was looking with that pictures because I'm wondering if you really even need a center channel. The TV is going to push these speakers quite wide. It's hard. The angles make it very hard for me to see, like, if the bookshelf speakers are going to be on either side of the couch. I don't think the leftmost
Well, if he puts them on
seat-
some stand, I mean, not if he's using the current little TV stand below the TV, but if you put him on some speaker stands, there's no problem there.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if he can get away, if he doesn't really need that center channel, but that's fine either way. Doesn't really matter.
I have no problem with you going KEF Q series. If the price and the looks are right, I'm A-okay with that choice. I would encourage you to get the smaller 150s for the surrounds, because if it is going to go behind that door, the 350 is not going to fit. The 350 is a pretty big speaker. Looking at the pictures doesn't tell you everything about the actual size of the 150s. Should be okay. So they are still a little bit less expensive even during the sales, so you're saving a little bit of money. It'll fit more nicely, so I get a pair of Q150s for the surrounds, 350s up front with the 650 center. Fantastic. A-okay.
Yeah. If you pull that couch away from the wall a little bit, make your life much better.
That'd be nice.
So what should the overhead speaker configuration be?
I mean, it could be 0. That would be very okay.
That's the direction I'm leaning.
Yeah, I know.
But he does have attic access. but this is an exterior
But look
wall.
at this ceiling. Are we going to put any holes in this ceiling? It's all decorated. It's coffered. Like I don't want to do anything.
I do not
in this
love
ceiling.
the idea of putting.
I don't want to put any. I don't want to put any speakers in this ceiling.
So should he get in-ceiling speakers, on-ceiling speakers, which his friend doesn't really want, so no on that one.
Nope.
Or wedge-shaped speakers mounted high up on the walls.
If you're going to do it, that's what I'd get.
He's actually seen some YouTubers advocating for speakers up high on the walls being better than ceiling speakers.
The Oro 3D fans, I know. Yeah.
Yes. Just shut up. So what would be the way to go? Do they need to stick with KEF for everything? Should they consider having more than 4 overheads? More than 4? This room is small. You're so close to the back wall. The best you're going to do is top middles and top and front heights.
Yeah.
Which could be a wedge-shaped speaker up front and a wedge-shaped speaker behind you if you really wanted to.
Sure could. Or on the side walls right at the top.
Too close to your surround speakers as far as I'm concerned. I think it's not going to make that much of a difference. But
if you do want any front to back steering, then that's certainly
that is the way to go.
Front wall, back wall. You do front wall, back wall. You'll have enough physical separation that they don't sound identical to the surrounds. Wedge-shaped speakers to me make sense. You can get them in the white finish if you do go with the KEF Q50As. If the price on the white finish prime elevations is less than the Q50As, I've got no problem mixing SVS prime elevations with KEF Q series speakers on the ground. But I just go with whatever's cheaper, right? Because if those KEF Q50As are also on sale and they're less than the prime elevations in Australia, I would absolutely go with those. I don't want to do anything on the ceiling in this room, so I would get some wedge-shaped speakers. If you're going to do it, I would also strongly consider stopping at 5.2 and just doing virtualized heights. Yes,
that's what I would do. Yeah. He assumes deciding on the speaker configuration was sort of determine which AV receiver worked best. He was thinking the Denon 38H. X38H could power everything in the 5.2.4 setup, but could they save money and get an X2800H instead? If you go with 5.2.
Yeah, if you don't bother with overheads, you could absolutely stop at the 2800H. If you do, and you want to do 4, then it's going to be the X3800H, and that decides it. So, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. Jay near Toronto. Jay has a 115-inch Loon Vision reference white screen, and he upgrades his projector from a Sony to an Epson 5050 UBE.
The E is the one that had the wireless HDMI built into it.
Yeah. He was a fan of 3D back in the day. He still has a couple Panasonic 3D plasma TVs on hand, but of course the Panasonic 3D glasses do not work with the Epson projector.
They would not.
Oh, why? Why would you want 3D to be accessible to people? Why would
Apple
you want
Vision
it to be
Pro.
successful?
They saw Apple Vision Pro was coming down the pike. They all got out of the way.
Just think, I could have an 83-inch TV or
a single Apple Vision Pro.
A single Apple Vision Pro.
That's right.
I wish I could put on the shelf right next to my 2 Oculus
MetaQuest 2 headsets.
Meta, whatever they're calling them these days.
Yes.
And that don't get ever used, ever. He liked that the Panasonic glasses blocked out light from the sides, but after a whole movie, they just start to feel a bit heavy and hurt his nose a bit. He found some high shock 3D glasses that are compatible with his Epson on Amazon Canada, so he gave them a try. They function. They're lightweight, no heaviness or hurting nose after a movie, but they let in a ton of light from the sides. The flames are glossy. Listen, man, you already look like a dork. Just put some Post-it notes on there.
Right.
The flames are glossy, so he can see some reflected light from those, especially at the bottom of his vision, and there seems to be a bit more crosstalk in the image, but maybe that's just the way it is with an LCD projector. Since Rob is the only other 3D fan he knows, smallest niche community in all of AV.
We're a fan club.
Are there better 3D glasses for his Epson 5050 UB that he can get a hold of in Canada at a not unreasonable price, no more than $100 a pair?
Yes. Now, not directly from Amazon Canada at the moment, but the Elic Live, that's just the brand name, the Elic Live Bluetooth glasses, they are definitely compatible with the Epson 5050 UB. You can order them from Amazon USA, Amazon.com. They will ship these to Canada. So they go for $30 US each. There's going to be the exchange rate, but that's definitely still under $100. There will be a shipping charge to send them from Amazon.com to a Canadian address, but it's like $12 or something something like that. So you're definitely under the price point you're talking about. These have the sort of same design similar to the Panasonics, where the sides are larger and block out light coming in from the sides somewhat. They are rechargeable, and the place where they put the USB port actually makes sense, because I've seen the ones where they put the USB charging port like in the bridge of the nose, and it feels absolutely awful. But this one, you just plug them in along the sides where it makes sense. And as far as the crosstalk goes, make sure that you read the manual, because there is a synchronization procedure that makes that crosstalk as minimal as it can be. And I think those check all the boxes. They have been available from Amazon.ca sometimes. They're coming from the same source. They're just importing them automatically. But at the moment, Amazon.ca doesn't have them available, but Amazon.com does, and they will ship it to Canada. So that is the way I would go.
All right. Never has there been a question I was less interested in the answer than that one.
That
Let's
makes
go.
Sense.
Bo. Bo is our newest audiophile listener. Let me say that lovingly and not with the normal disdain I use the word audiophile as. And he's back after we discussed his first set of questions that he sent to us last week. So we didn't chase him away, which is probably what happened to that other guy. In fact, he thought we were hilarious, but also informative. So he's back with some more things to ask us. First up, he followed our immediate advice and returned the expensive AudioQuest cables to his dealer. His dealer tried to talk him out of it, but he put his foot down.
Congratulations.
The cables he was using before are back in place, and they sound every bit as good.
Yes,
He gleaned from us that, in general, we do not think cables and wire make a difference, or at least not an improvement, but he hopes we can understand how he still has some confusion about the whole topic.
Yeah.
Of course. I do. There's a lot of people trying to sell you expensive cables, and we are not them.
And if you've been listening to a bunch of audiophile stuff for years and years and years, this is an about face, yes.
So, in short, he's been following Gene from Audioholics and Paul McGowan from PS Audio. Ugh.
Yeah, that's a... two dissimilar things. It's a bit weird to have them both in the same sentence the way he had them in his email, but those are two dissimilar sources of information.
Paul McGowan, man, I can make you know, like when you, I don't know that this happens on your phones, but on my phone, if I'm scrolling past the news, like a recommended article or a video, it'll start the video with subtitles on it, like in my feed.
Okay.
And I can see the question that he's being asked. He usually reads it out. And then he starts his answer, and that's as much as I need to know that he's wrong.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah.
So he's added us to the list of people he thinks seem smart. I'll take it. And trusted. Paul very much talks about cables making a difference. He's got many videos about it, because that is a true statement. Yeah. And Gene has posted measurements and reviews of cables explaining how they can and do make a difference. Mm. So he's just trying to reconcile what we say with what they say. If someone like Gene can measure differences and someone like Paul can sound so knowledgeable and well-reasoned about cables, how come we are essentially saying they don't make a difference? Says the man who just returned the expensive cables. And more to the point, why didn't he hear the difference with those AudioQuest cables, which is making him lean more towards our side of things? Well, obviously you don't have a good enough set of speakers. That is what the audiophile group will tell you. If you cannot hear the difference, there are two possible explanations. One, you have lead ears, or not golden ears, which are often called lead ears. You are not experienced enough or knowledgeable enough or have the hearing capacity to hear the massive, always massive difference between cables, or your system is not good enough. Okay, there is never in the consideration of the audiophile community is it that the cables didn't make a dang bit of difference.
Didn't change the sound, yeah.
Because that can't be the case, because they cost money.
Sure.
And because people like Paul McGowan and sometimes Gene will say that they can hear or measure a difference.
Big difference. So that's what I want to talk about. So look, I don't want to badmouth anybody, and I will say, like, Paul McGowan, I've listened to a fair number of his things, and it's like every once in a while there is something correct that is stated
accidentally.
Yeah, or downright valuable. There's a very well-known TV reviewer on YouTube as well, where I'm like, I have actually, from his videos, gleaned a couple of things like in TV menus that he details, where I'm like, that was actually really useful information. But there is so much bad information coming from Paul McGowan when it comes to how audio works. Not necessarily what products to buy, because again, accidentally he often gets things right. But in terms of explaining how audio actually works, there's so much wrong that I find it very difficult to say it's worth sifting through the good information from the bad. It's one of those cases where there are enough other sources of good information that it's easier to just ignore what is being said. Now that's going to be very difficult because we know Bo's a fan. He's like, he sounds very well reasoned. He speaks well. He's eloquent. I agree with those things. It's just the information is not something that I would point to as, yeah, this is the person to listen to when it comes to explaining how it all works. Gene, on the other hand, yeah, absolutely. You can listen to what Gene is saying. The measurements are there. I think this has got to be coming from the Kimber cable time.
Yeah.
Which is a moment in time when I took Gene to task because I was like, yeah, look, I know the words are like technically correct in this review, but the tone is so misleading that I was really displeased with a lot of what I was reading during the Kimber Cable sponsored time of Audioholics, where there was all this praise for Kimber Cable. Was it a true statement that you could take the double 14 gauge, which is effectively an 11 gauge cable, compare it to like 12 gauge or 10 gauge Belkin bulk cable from Blue Jeans, and at least do no harm to the signal for all this extra money? Yep, absolutely. You can absolutely, have a case where it's doing no harm. Can you, and this is the measurements you're talking about, show that a dual or quad, because it was like braided, right? That a like quad 14 gauge cable actually had lower resistance than a 12 gauge cable? Yes. Yeah, that's a factual statement. You make the thickness of the cable thicker and you're going to have a lower resistance. That is measurable. It is not audible in any way whatsoever. You'd have to have a 3 kilometer long speaker wire before you could even measure something within the audible frequency range in terms of difference. It's just completely not here or there. Then the major one was because of the braided construction of the Kimber cables, there was a difference in the inductance was lower and the capacitance was higher. Capacitance and inductance in a speaker wire are always going to be inverses of each other. If you lower one, you're automatically going to raise the other. And if you basically put a bunch of bends into a cable, you're going to lower the inductance, but you're going to raise the capacitance. The ultimate effect on the sound in a speaker wire is the same. It slightly attenuates the high frequencies. And that's really all that's going to happen. So again, this was a thing where, yeah, you could measure these things, but you absolutely could not hear them. It was just not a case where it was possible to hear the differences. So that is mentioned in Gene's reviews. He's like, I could put in 10 gauge Belkin speaker wire and there would be no audible difference. But it was a single sentence and the tone of the entire rest of the review was how good the Kimber cables were. I'm not saying they weren't good. I'm saying they were no better than the 10 gauge Belkin speaker wire, which Gene did say in a single sentence buried way down in a part of the review that hardly anybody was going to read. There was these Kimber cables are highly recommended. I'm like, no, they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be highly recommended. There's no reason to spend that much money. There's no performance advantage whatsoever. So can there be objectively measurable differences in wires? Yes. I'm not going to, that is just a fact. There's no disagreement there. Are they audible is a completely different kettle of fish.
Yes. Yes. And that's what it comes down to. The rest of the audiophile community, just stands on the assumption, in their minds, fact that cables make a difference.
Right.
And then try to explain away why you can't hear them, because if they make a difference and you're not hearing it, well, then the problem is you or your system. It's never the cable itself.
And Tom and I have both experienced cables that are bad enough,
yes,
that they do make an obvious difference.
I've experienced amps that were bad enough.
Sure.
That made a difference.
So we're not going to
say that. We often
that,
say on here that amps don't make a difference.
So we're not going to say that cables and wires cannot make a difference or never make a difference. They can.
Yes.
But the only thing they can do is make the signal worse. They can never make a signal better.
Yes. The first thing we talked about for spending money improving his 2-channel listening room and making a real audible difference was room treatments. He doesn't have any.
Yep.
This comes as a massive shock to both of us because this is the group that you're in probably never even mentioned it to you. When he asked his dealer, they don't sell any. That's also not shocking because why would they sell things to people who don't want to buy them? So off to Gik he went since we recommended them. Overall, he was impressed with them. He's talked to a customer service rep on the phone who gave him some quick and basic advice and suggestions. But having looked at all around Gik's website, he's not feeling a bit overwhelmed, which is totally normal.
That is very fair, when it's new to you especially.
They have so many different kinds of panels, each of which has many options. The customer service rep talked about putting panels on the sidewalls and the ceiling, but where exactly should panels go, and what type, and which options? He knows he could further talk with Gik, but he already likes and trusts us, so can we help him out? And since it's obviously important, let's get a few details out about his room. It's big, 10,000 cubic feet. Holy crap. 20 by 25 layout, but with 20-foot ceilings.
Yeah.
He's actually very interested in buying and installing the panels himself. He's enjoyed getting more hands-on with his own audio gear and setup, and he's looking at everything Gik has to offer. And he's kind of excited about doing this upgrade for his listening room on his own. He needs our guidance. So what should he get? Where should he go? And how the heck would he actually put panels on his ceiling 20 feet above the floor? First of all, I don't disagree that panels on the ceiling make a difference.
Sure.
Okay. I do not. I agree that they do.
Area.
It is a place where sound can be absorbed.
It sure can.
I have never and almost will never recommend putting them there because of how much of a pain in the butt it is.
Right.
I have done it.
Yeah.
I have done it in my own room. There are solutions. I came up with solutions that the guy who was an installer for these things was like, I'm going to steal that. That's how much he liked my solution. I'm going to tell you, don't do it. It's just so rarely worth it.
And if you're able to have enough absorption on other surfaces of your room, it isn't vital. It isn't critical that they go on the ceiling. You can address the acoustic issues.
Did he say anything about carpet? He didn't say anything about carpet.
It wasn't mentioned, so I'm not sure. And I don't know the complete construction of this room, exactly what materials we're working with. But what I want to give you is, the 10,000-foot view, the what are we trying to achieve here? What is our sort of, basic goal? And what we want to do is have a room where you take the total surface area, right? So we know the cubic footage. That's great. 20 by 25 by 20. But we take the total surface area, so your four walls, your ceiling, and your floor, and we want in the range of 10 to 30%. So 10% of that total surface area is about the minimum, 30% of that total surface area is about the maximum, and have that covered in some sort of broadband, meaning a wide frequency range all the way from the bass into the treble, as thick as you can so that you get that widest frequency range, absorptive material. One of the things that you'll hear Dr. Floyd Toole talk or write about is that when this is a two-channel music listening setup, and we're talking about what the vast majority of people prefer, right? So these are, some caveats here, but that's pretty reasonable stuff because that's pretty much exactly the situation we're talking about with your room. What he notes is that most people, when they're listening to two-channel music, don't prefer to completely eliminate the room itself, because most people aren't listening with their eyes closed, or they're listening to music, so you have a sense of the room that you're in. And much of the music, like I talked about last time, is studio recordings where there isn't a bunch of information about the room in the recording itself, where the recording was made. It's like a vocalist in a booth, a studio recording of instruments, close miking on each instrument separately. And so having that sense that you've brought those instruments into your listening room is very pleasurable in a lot of situations. So that means that we actually want a little bit less focus on very specific spots in your room, reducing reflections there. We want the overall room to have nice uniform decay times, to not have an echo in this room, to not be able to clap your hands in this room and have that clap kind of ring or zing around the room.
It probably does right now.
I would imagine it does. I would imagine this outright echoes if you say something short and loud and long enough, especially if it is hard surfaces with no carpet or something like that. Floyd Toole talks about how if you have just like normal furniture, a carpeted room, maybe some heavy drapes on the walls, those do impact the highest frequencies. It's not like those have zero impact. And so what we end up with, coming back to the overgeneralized, overall general type of approach, is if you have about 10% of the surfaces of this room covered in bass trapping, right? So nice thick 4, 6, or 8-inch thick panels. And that includes however much air is behind them. So around that distance off your walls or in your corners or the edges of your room. You get about 10%. And then if this is a carpeted room, if this is plush furniture, if there are thick drapes and that, you don't have to do a ton more than that to have a A, very noticeable difference from the previously kind of echoey, zingy room, and B, a pretty good, like, the overall decay times are reasonable now. Going beyond that, like 15%, 20% is almost always very pleasurable. Above that, it starts to sound like a bit treated. It starts to sound a bit padded. And not everybody likes that. So the good news is you don't have to go overboard in here. You don't have to go too crazy. What makes sense geometry-wise is putting panels in the corners and the edges of your room, simply because a single panel now covers more surface area if it's straddling a corner or straddling an edge. It's not that corners or edges are particularly better for putting your bass traps, but you're gaining a geometric advantage. You're covering more surface area with a single panel. So what I want you to focus on, number one, if you do nothing else, go to the bass trap section of GIK's website. That's where you want to start, and that's where you want to focus. And within that bass trap section, they have a whole bunch of different options. They have the ones that are triangular shaped, and you can stack them in the corners, the vertical corners of your room. They have the ones that they call their soffit traps, which are rectangular shaped, and those go great if you do end up putting them against the ceiling to wall edges, or they can go in the floor to wall edges, or they can go in the vertical too, if you don't mind more of a column look. Or you can use them like faux columns along the sides of your walls. All sorts of things you can do with those soft straps. Nice, big, and thick. They're very effective. And I would focus on just the full range ones. Don't worry about the range limiters. And unless you just prefer the looks, and that's a completely reasonable thing, I have no problem if you prefer the looks, but you don't have to look at the ones that also have like the slat fusers or the diffusion panel on the front of it.
Yeah, if you're just looking for absorbers of a certain thickness, yes, and then you just pick the color you want.
That's right.
And you're done.
Now, the other thing you could do is GIK will let you print artwork onto those, and they do a very good job of that. So you can have artwork or photos of your own printed on those. And if you are putting some panels on your front wall, your back wall, your side walls, you might be like, oh, I actually prefer it to have artwork or photos printed on those. Fantastic. Do that. Or you might look at those impression or alpha or slat fuser versions. You're like, oh, I really like the look of those wood panels that they have on there, the patterns that they have. I just like the look of that. A-okay, go for that. But you want to focus on bass traps. If you do nothing else, focus on bass traps. Where should they go? Corners, great. Edges of walls, great, because you're getting that geometric advantage. For a listening room like this, again, following Dr. Floyd Toole's advice is key. Front wall is really important in a big room like yours with big tower speakers that are a decent distance away from the walls. Front wall is really important. Thick as you can, get the look that you like. But again, it's going to be in that bass trap section of GIK's website. The front wall is also a place where if, and this is a big if, and I don't think it's probably the case, but if your room is fully carpeted, you have lots of big plush furniture in their room, you have a whole bunch of like tapestries and wall hangings and like really thick plush drapes. I don't know how plush or how sparse your room is at the moment, but if you have a ton of that stuff that is affecting high frequencies, that's where the range limiter bass traps could be useful, is your front wall, particularly on your front wall. And I say that because the range limiter actually makes them a little bit more effective at absorbing the deepest bass frequencies, which is what's going to be reflecting from your speakers near the front of the room. And it makes them a little bit less reflective in the treble frequencies, which the sound isn't really traveling backwards from the speakers very much in the treble frequencies. It is in the bass frequencies. So range limiters on your front wall make a lot of sense. If you're like, why does GIK have all these options, right? Part of it is looks, but part of it is, there is a reason for those range limiters, and the front wall is it. The other one you want to focus on is the back wall. By and large, thick as you can, absorption only is all you need, but very often, just for looks, something like the slat fusers looks great back there and perform really well as well. Dr. Floyd Toole would tell you that first reflections in a large 2-channel only listening room like this, not really something you have to worry about. In fact, many people prefer it when those first reflections are still there. Your walls are a minimum of, 10 feet away from a centralized seat. We don't have a problem with you just leaving the first reflections at your ceiling and side walls. GIK's normal advice, because they're usually dealing with smaller rooms and they're very often dealing with people putting together studios and those types of things. So they focus on those first reflections quite a bit. But I'm here to tell you, and Dr. Floyd would tell you, it's a lot less important here. What we want is the overall decay times. So bass trapping. Honestly, you can limit yourself to the bass trap section of GIK's website, and then you just look at those options, and I think I've explained what they all are.
That's right. I am doing something else.
Yes.
So I am going to just throw another spanner in the works here and mention that there's also Acoustimac. Which,
oh, sure. Yes, of course.
Which is also is just another solution. I think they're local to me, and I keep meaning to call them up and get a tour down there and go look at some of their products. But they have similar products and similar solutions. I'm on their website right now, like their basic panels, their acoustic panel, which is, and I'm just kind of getting an idea of how they go here, and it looks like 2 inches is the thickest one I'm looking at here. Maybe
for the basic ones, but they also have bass traps in 4-inch and I think 6-inch as well.
So you can find all that stuff there as well.
The Acoustimac doesn't have as many options as GIK though. Like they don't have the combo panels, they don't have the range limiter panels. So it's Acoustimac I love because you can tend to get just absorption panels at even lower prices, and they have a wide range of fabrics, including like suede fabrics, which can be really nice.
Yeah, which I do like, and they do the art panels as well. So we were correct that his pair of B&W 800D3 towers are the only speakers in this room. Now he wants subs, and we like to maintain his relationship with his dealer. The man, you pay him, that relationship will be there whether you like it or not, and whether or not he likes you.
Become friends. Yeah.
That's fine, and that's fine. But whatever. So after a quick chat about subwoofers, his first option was a pair of JL Audio Gotham G213 V2 subs. That's too many numbers.
It is dual 13-inch drivers in the Gothams.
Yeah. He likes their looks. He's totally fine with their price. Do we agree that they'd be an appropriate choice for his room and setup? He didn't tell us if the room was enclosed, did he? He just said it wasn't
specifically
20
mentioned.
by 25 by 20.
Yeah.
So he knows we can point to less expensive subs. But are there subs that would be downright better even if they cost more than the Gothams? Now, JL Audio makes them perfectly capable of subwoofers.
Oh, yes.
I don't see any problem with them. You could definitely spend less and get the same performance.
Sure.
But
and
if this friendship is worth buying, which is what it sounds like you're doing,
then I guess get even louder. Like especially if this is not an enclosed 20 by 25 by 20 feet. If that is like the listening area, but it's actually open to a whole bunch more space, then even the Gothams, which are the largest, JL Audio home subs, even they wouldn't be able to get you to 115 decibels, down at 20 hertz. You could get even larger, even louder subs. JTR would be a great choice for that, but the looks of the JTRs are nothing like the Gothams. The JTRs are very industrial, plain black boxes, but if you just want output, then something from JTR would make a whole lot of sense. But overall, if this is closed 20 by 25 by 20, the Gothams are a very good choice in here. You're not going to get way, way better than them or something like that. I have no problem with you going with those subs.
Yeah, if you're fine with the price, and like I said,
right,
that's fine. So he's going back to Paul from PS Audio for a moment. I wish you wouldn't, but here we are. Let's never speak of it again. He has a video in which he talks about front and left right speaker placement. I don't know that I would trust this video, but let's go on. He explained about reflections and bass waves. He explained how long they are and how...
it's mentioned.
Everything.
Then incorrect information comes forth,
And said that those were the reasons why your pair of speakers ought to have the exact same distance from the side walls and the front wall behind the speakers. What are our thoughts on the subject, and how precise do you actually need to be? Is 0 precise an option here? Your bass waves are now going to be coming, the big ones at least are coming from your new subs. So we don't have to worry about that.
That's the big thing, right? Because, of course, PS Audio, they're never talking about subs or bass management. It's full-range speakers only. So that's a huge part of that. You don't have to worry about precision in terms of, like, distance from front wall and back wall once you have bass management in place and your pair of subs. By the way, those pair of Gotham subs, if that's what you end up going with, don't put them right beside your tower speakers, right? Because they look symmetrical and everything's at the front of the room. That's not what we want to do. We want your pair of subs positioned where they handle the bass the best, because that's all the Gotham subs are going to be playing. We want them at the middle of your two side walls, or the middle of your front wall and the middle of your back wall, or if none of that is okay, then diagonally across the room from each other. But the optimal placement, honestly, would be the middle of your two side walls, and I'm thinking in a room this size, that's probably not going to be too much of an issue. That would be optimal for you. As far as placing the front, left, and right speakers, they should go where the imaging is best. And there are going to be issues with the bass. That's going to happen. Mathematically, though, Paul is wrong. If you were using full-range speakers, mathematically speaking, the best location for a pair of full-range speakers would be take the total length of your room from front to back, okay? Divide that by 4. That would be the distance, right? So if we make the math a little easier, let's say from front to back was 24 feet, then you would want these speakers 6 feet away from the front wall. You want a quarter of the length. Then you would want it a quarter of the width, not exactly the same, not 6 feet from the side wall and 6 feet from the front wall. Mathematically, that's actually going to create problems with the bass waves where they meet. You wanted a quarter of the width of your room apart. So mathematically, that would be the best location, but we don't have to worry about that if we have bass management and we're offloading those troublesome bass frequencies where there are all sorts of wave interactions to your subwoofers, which they can be optimally placed, which is the middle of your two side walls.
Yeah. Yeah. I want you, his questions are done, but I want you to scroll back up to our comments from our listeners where we had our guy whose name I'm trying to find. Here we go. I found him. Joe. He had this room set up for the retirement home or whatever that's called.
Oh, right. Yes. And
if you're thinking to yourself, how am I going to hang, or how many should I have? How am I going to hang these things? Mm-hmm. This is good. Like just look at this and like aesthetically, this is what it should look like. Kind of, Hopefully you have carpet on your ground.
A bit. Well, actually, maybe not that much bigger. Yeah, this is a pretty decent sized room that's going on. And
remember, he has a drop tile ceiling here, so he's also got some absorption going up on up top. So he doesn't need quite as much. He also doesn't have like the corner trapping that we've been talking about. Right. He just has panels on the walls, but he's got more absorption than you can see because he's got the carpet, he's got the pad underneath the carpet, which is doing something.
Also, there is a riser. He's done some stuff in there.
Yeah, there's a drop tile ceiling, which you can put absorption up there. There's more stuff going on. But as far as aesthetically, this is what it can kind of look like. Yeah. And hanging these panels is way easier than you think it is.
Well, can you hang a picture? Because if you can hang a picture, you can hang these panels. That's the way GIG works.
That's the way GIG works. And I use those little... God, I wish I had the name of them on the tip of my tongue. But they look like essentially just like a little metal hook, and that you push through the drywall and then spin it, and then it has a little tab for you to hang your whatever it is, your picture from. And they work great. And if you get it wrong, you pull it out, can't even see the hole really, and then you put it in someplace else.
And these are just one example of one pattern in GIG's impression series. Yes. They don't have to be black. They have all kinds of different wood color finishes. So aesthetically, you can make it look like almost anything you want, like decoration.
Yeah. All right, so we are pretty far over at this point.
But we got so many questions left. If you're willing to go long, I certainly am.
Well, I mean, I do have stuff to do. I still have to write this article. We'll do maybe one or two more. Kevin has a JVC NX5 projector and the Anthem AVM70 Pre-Pro. His sources are a Panasonic Ultra HD Blu-ray player, NVIDIA Shield, and Roku. He's got a 40-foot active HDMI cable, which is 18 gigabits per second, going from his Pre-Pro to his projector. The system is controlled with the Control 4 system, and he does have a dealer to program it and make changes for him. The Shield and the Roku just stay powered on all the time. Mm-hmm. Whenever he goes to start an activity using the Control 4 system, the projector, Pre-Pro, and chosen source all power up at the same time. The JVC's home screen appears, but after about 5 seconds of warming up, it just goes to a blue screen. He can manually resolve it by switching to a different HDMI input on the Anthem and then switching back to the correct input. Things work after that, but it's an annoyance, and it ought to work better than that, right?
Ideally, that would be nice, right? The one button press was the promise. The
blue screen problem only happens with the Shield and Roku. If he's using the activity for the Panasonic Blu-ray player, things work as they should. He went to the extent of putting in an HD Fury Doctor HDMI in between his Anthem and his JVC. That did not fix the issue. Mm-hmm. It also isn't just the Anthem's fault, because the same issue used to happen with this old Yamaha receiver that got replaced too. The Control 4 dealer suggested his active HDMI cable might either need to be replaced or it might need a voltage booster installed. Do we have any other ideas? Yeah, I have my idea is for every activity you have, insert a switch to the Ultra HD player and then switch back to whatever one you want it to go to. Because if it switching to the HDMI, the Ultra HD player input fixes it every single time, then just do that. And now your problems are solved.
Well, I mean, just it could switch to any other HDMI and then just back to the one that you actually wanted.
But we know that it's switching to that. If it goes to the Ultra HD player, we know that if you were to power on the HDMI player, the Ultra HD player, it works anyways. So switching it to it is fine. Anything else, if you were trying to switch to one of your other inputs, I guess you could pick an input that doesn't have anything on it. That would work too.
Yeah.
But
that's
what I would do.
Honestly, just this is similar to when we were programming activities for our own Harmony remotes, or now Sofabaton X1S. A few more commands in the activity is kind of all that's really needed here. Part of it could be introducing some more delays, because those JVC projectors, they too do take a moment to turn on. Part of the issue that's going on here is, there is a HDMI handshake that needs to take place every time. With the source devices, your Roku and your Shield staying on all the time, when everything is powered up and then the JVC is finally ready, it's like, well, that handshake isn't actually taking place, leading to that blue screen, whereas the Ultra HD Blu-ray player, it is also cycling up, so you don't get that HDMI handshake taking place until the JVC and the Ultra HD Blu-ray player have both booted up, whereas the other two sources are already there. So all that's really needed is you could introduce a delay, which is just to say the JVC gets powered on first, waits a little bit, then the Anthem gets turned on, waits a little bit, and then the input is selected. And I would recommend, similar to what we just talked about in, like, if I was programming this in a Harmony or a Sofabaton, I would have it first go to not the input I want, and then go to the input that I want. And your dealer should be able to make that programming.
I'm surprised your dealer hasn't just solved this issue this way. Believe me, we are not like some sort of gurus when it comes to these things.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that maybe he wants to sell you more stuff, but yeah, I mean, the fact that if you just switch the input to another HDMI and then back to the one you actually wanted, it works. You don't need to replace the HDMI cable. Clearly, the signal is getting through. If you were having constant signal dropouts, then I would be like, oh, okay, maybe it's time to replace the HDMI cable. Maybe that's the issue, but that's not what's going on here. This is just an input and an HDMI handshake issue. It's not even an EDID issue, which is what the HD Fury is all about. It's simply that one handshake was done too early. That's really all that's going on here. Adding some delays to the activity setting, or simply adding the command to wait a little bit, go to the wrong HDMI input, then go to the right one, and now you are back to the one button press solution. I do know some dealers try to avoid that because you push the button and then you have to wait. You have to wait a little bit. Like
you're waiting anyways.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Like in the Harmony, you had to wait because it did things sequentially. In the Control 4, it can send multiple commands simultaneously. So it's the fastest, and that's what this dealer has obviously opted to do, because I'm sure there are other customers like, I want to push the button and have it go right now. Like no waiting between button push and response. I know that's probably where he's coming from. Fair enough. But I think you, having asked us this question, are an intelligent enough customer that you'll be like, oh yeah, I got to wait 5 seconds. I'm okay with that because now I can push one button and it's ready to go.
Dan, so this is kind of mostly a rant, given that Dan has ultimately found a solution, but he isn't happy about it. And he does want to ask if there is something much less expensive and what we make of this whole situation.
Yeah.
He's got a Marantz SR8015 receiver. All of his sources are plugged into it. Xbox Series X, PS5, Verizon cable box. There's your problem. Sony Ultra HD Blu-ray player. Is it really?
I don't think so. I think this
Apple
is
TV
actually the 2
4K.
displays. Yeah.
Those are all the sources. He has 2 displays, a Sony XW5000 ES 4K projector, and Samsung the Frame TV. That is also your problem.
Wow.
He does want to be able to use both displays at the same time, and they're both in separate rooms, so the Samsung is plugged into Zone 2 HDMI output on the Marantz. While one display is a projector and the other display is TV. They're both 4K. They both top out at 60 hertz, and they both support HDR, and neither of them does Dolby Vision or VRR. On paper, there shouldn't be any HDMI signal compatibility issues, but there are.
Yeah.
Okay, before we even really begin, I know that these things, like some receivers and even Ultra HD Blu-ray players and stuff, they'll have 2 HDMI outputs and they support they can support 2 different things or whatever. None of them are really meant to be used in this way. It's kind of like a button in your car that does something, and you're like, I never really ever want to press this button. When I was looking at cars, there was a button you could press that would scan around the outside of the car. Like, it would show you like the cameras all the way around the car, and then it would zoom up above the car as if there were a camera floating above you on a drone that would show you all around your car. And I said, what is this for? Like, just to show you if there's something or somebody around your car. I'm like,
that's right.
I can look and see. I don't need this button for anything.
Tom. You can only look at the screen. Your neck doesn't turn that far.
That is what the dual HDMI outputs are for most of the time.
On the other hand, though, I mean, Marantz themselves talks about, like, if you have a projector and a television, because they know that that's the setup. So, yeah.
If you do, and nobody does,
it should work.
Therefore, anyways. The video signal blinks all the time. Sometimes one display or the other will go black for seemingly no reason. Marantz customer support said it must be some sort of EDID issue causing additional HDMI handshakes, which is true. That's almost certainly what it is.
Yeah.
But they said there's nothing the SR8015 itself can do about it. He tried an HD Fury device that didn't fix the issue, so eventually found an AV Pro Edge dealer. They have EDID boxes to resolve issues like this, but it was also necessary to use one of their Fox and Hound analyzers, a completely separate box, to even figure out what settings were needed. With the results that came back from the Fox and Hound analyzer, it appears the main issue is that the Sony projector by default requests a 444 signal, while the Samsung wants a 420 signal. Great. How would anybody know that?
Yep.
We knew it. We didn't tell you. We didn't want to spoil your fun.
It would be enough to cause HDMI handshake issues, though, because those are 2 different formats.
That's right. But now that he knew, he thought that maybe setting the HD Fury to the lowest common denominator would get things working, and that kind of did as long as everything was already turned on. A new issue reared its head whenever he would power things down and then try to use them again the next day. There were still HDMI signal glitches, so the AV Pro Edge dealer came back, analyzed it again, and discovered that some sort of clocking issue that does not completely understand. But seemingly something in the signal clocks between the 2 displays gets out of sync unless they're both already on, and then you activate the EDID box. But the HD Fury or the EDID box does not remember all of the clocking when things get shut off, which is just, all this is madness.
Yeah.
So the AV Pro Edge has an EDID box that does remember the clocking, costs more, of course, but it's just one HDMI in and one HDMI out. So for the clocks to always be in sync across both of his displays, even when they powers them on and off, he needs 2 of those AV Pro Edge EDID boxes, one for each display. He did it. He paid for it. It works. But it sure seems like way more money than he should have to pay, in addition to everything he already has. So what do we make of all of it? Is there a cheaper solution? An 83-inch OLED. At this point, if you consider the aggravation and cost and time lost and stress and how many years off your life this has taken, you probably could have afforded one of the 100-inch OLEDs that are out there. the $100,000 ones. Yeah, just get the big TV. I mean, okay, I feel you, my man.
No
I feel
kidding.
you. Yeah. I feel you. It should be easy. In fact, not only should, once you found out that the displays were asking for 2 different formats, the 444 versus 420, you should have been able to go into one of them and say, stop it.
Exactly.
Just stop it.
Yes.
You should go in there and just say 420 for you 2. Shut up. That's what you're getting. Just stop it.
No, EDID is fixed. EDID is not something that anything that the user settings change makes a lick of difference.
Yeah.
It's just fixed. If anything, the issue is that the frame is apparently just not compatible with 4.4 signals. 444 signals, which is not that surprising. Many TVs were not into. It's only more recently that you had it, and then very often only if you put it into the PC input specific mode. Otherwise, they don't handle 444. Whereas the projector, being a projector, it was like, yeah, 444, give me it. So yeah, that's not really a shock, but like you say, how would you just know that offhand? How would you even guess it unless you had this analyzing device? And then once you do know it, why isn't having an HD Fury set to the lowest common denominator? Because yeah, the Sony can take a 420 signal. There's no problem with that. It can absolutely take that. But even that isn't enough because apparently there's some kind of clock synchronization issue that goes and messes things up. Like I was gonna say, if you only have the scenario where you are either using one display or the other display, or even if you're using both displays, you're having them both show the same thing, then you can do a workaround. It's not great. I'm not saying this is elegant, but you can do a workaround, which is that the Marantz has 3 HDMI outputs. 2 of them are 1 and 2 are mirrored, and then there's the third zone 2 separate output.
Right.
And you can set it in the Marantz's user menu to be like only output from monitor output 1, or only output from monitor output 2, or output from monitor output 1 and 2 at the same time, but then they both have to show the same source. And that's a workaround where you could manually do this, right? It's a bit clunky and more remote button presses, but it would function because if you have any of these issues and you're like, well, I'm only using the projector right now, then you go in there and you're like, yeah, only use monitor output 1, and then it isn't blinking because it's also looking at what it's connected to on monitor output 2. And it does function. We've solved other people's issues that way where they like have the flat panel that has the screen that comes down in front of it. So they're really only effective using one screen or the other, and both would be showing the same thing. But it's like, no, he's got all these sources. It makes sense he plugged them into the HDMI hub, which is his AV receiver. And then sometimes he wants to show one thing on the projector in the theater room and something different on the frame TV that's in a separate room. And it has that functionality, right? It's got zone 2 HDMI output. You're supposed to be able to do that. But as long as these 2 darn displays are plugged in, even if one of them isn't turned on right now, it's like, yeah, the image is blinking because there's this stupid EDID information that's trying to get resolved. Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm aware, the HD Fury devices, I'm not aware of them doing clocking issues like this. Like you say, it'll function if everything's already on and synchronized, and then you turn on the HD Fury to handle the EDID, but it doesn't remember the clocking issue. And the regular AV Pro Edge device that they sold you first, it doesn't do it too. You have to go to the upgraded one that remembers this clocking issue. Like, the only other solution here is to replace one or both of the displays with displays that don't have this inherent incompatibility with them.
So it was the frame. I knew it.
Yeah. Well, there is one other solution, but it isn't a total solution, which is you get something like the HD Fury 8K Vroom device, and you use that as your HDMI switch because it has 4 HDMI inputs and 4 HDMI outputs with full matrix switching between them. Now, 2 of those HDMI outputs are audio only, but you only need the 2 video ones. And now you have offloaded all of the HDMI switching and management. It's not your Marantz handling it anymore. The thing is, he has more than 4 sources. He has more than 4 HDMI sources. So, and you can only plug 4 into the 8K Vroom. And the 8K Vroom isn't a cheap device, although it's less expensive than getting 2 of the AV Pro Edge. So I have those 2 as possible pseudo workarounds. Maybe one of those.
I think it's cheaper just to get a new TV. Honestly, after all this, it's cheaper just to get a new TV.
It might be.
The problem is that Samsung the frame it's kind of cultish in its following. People got it because it did a specific thing, and it's got this specific features. Like you can mount it. It's got a special mounting thing where you can mount it like super flush on the wall, like it's a picture.
That's right.
The whole picture stuff.
And it's got the actual physical frames that you can change around it, and then it's got the matte screen finish and the always-on display.
I get all that. Yeah, I get all that. But sometimes you're in an abusive relationship and you don't know you're in an abusive relationship until you get out of it. Currently, you're in an abusive relationship with this TV. You are doing everything you can to make this relationship work. Right. It's not working. I think we can all agree that it's not working and that you need to move on.
I think
that's the solution.
If you don't change the display, and it would be less expensive to get this than to get a whole new display, that 8K Vroom as long as you can figure out a way to get by with 4 shared sources. Like I say, if there's one source where like maybe the Sony Blu-ray player, maybe that really only ever gets used in the theater, right? Like maybe that virtually never gets used in the TV room, or one of the source. If there's one source that basically only gets used in one room or the other, that could either get plugged directly into that display and then rely on ARC or eARC or something, or that could go into one of the Marantz' other outputs. And since, well, I don't know, maybe even that wouldn't work. or you could get an HDMI switch and feed that into the 8K room. But I mean, I think the 8K room is maybe the best solution that you have here.
Yeah. One last question, we're done.
Cool.
Kris, TIDAL's announcement of the new subscription prices got him interested. He'd like to give them a try. Then he saw how many different formats they offer, and it's rather confusing. He'd like to be able to hear the very best that TIDAL can provide. So he used their own supported devices filter, and apparently if he wants high-res lossless, high-res FLAC, and Dolby Atmos music to all be available to him, he needs to either use a computer, an iOS or Android phone, or a really expensive network streamer from Name.
Yeah.
He doesn't like any of those options. He wants to try TIDAL. He wants their highest quality, but doesn't want to hook up a computer or a wire phone to his AV receiver. He doesn't want to spend a pile of money. So he's already has 2 NVIDIA Shield devices. One's first gen, one's second gen, and a Roku Ultra. He'd be willing to buy another streaming device like an Apple TV 4K or whatever, but that's as far as he'd go. Is there a solution that will work for him? No, you just read what the solution was. You don't want any of those. NVIDIA Shields are basically computers, but just because they are basically computers, I mean, everything's basically a computer these days.
Sure, yeah, it's
so
yeah.
From the TIDAL standpoint, it's not supported. It's not supportive. There's
right.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you, my man.
It's a programming and DAC issue. Here is the solution. Here's the real thing. Don't worry about high res.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
That honestly, like that's the real fix here, because lossless, I'm okay with you wanting lossless. Although honestly, the lowest thing TIDAL offers is 320 kilobit AAC, which is as good as lossless, but if you want lossless, I'm okay with you wanting that. Lossless, you don't have to have high res, which is like the greater than 16-bit, greater than 44.1 kilohertz sampling. You don't have to have the high res to have lossless. They have lossless in CD quality, 16-bit, 44.1 kilohertz, and then they also have high res all the way up to like 24-bit and 192 kilohertz or something like that. You really don't need to worry about the high res. That's the solution here. Not the least of which is, Kris said he's plugging whatever he's using into an AV receiver. Your AV receiver isn't going to do any of its bass management, room correction, or anything at higher than 48 kilohertz. Right. None of them, well, I guess the handful out there that go up to 96, like the Trinovs, but that's not what he has. So, I mean, any of the mass market AV receivers, if you have bass management present, if you have room correction present, 48 kilohertz is as high as they go in the sampling rate anyway, so feeding it 192 is just going to get downsampled, and like it's not worth worrying about. So, if you want lossless and you want Dolby Atmos music, because that's a whole separate thing, Dolby Atmos music, you do have to have a device that's capable of supporting that. Great news, you have a second-gen NVIDIA Shield. And the second-gen NVIDIA Shield with the TIDAL app that is present for that device does Dolby Atmos music, and it does lossless in CD quality from TIDAL. It just doesn't do the high res. So that is a cheap solution because you are buying nothing. And the only thing you have to change is the mindset of, they offer this thing that's in a tier that's even higher. Like, don't worry about it. You don't need 24-bit, 192 kilohertz for your music. Lossless quality is absolutely fine. And you'll be able to do Dolby Atmos music with your second generation NVIDIA Shield.
Where have we come as a society that we go from lossless and people say, no, I need it to be better than that.
Of course.
I need it to be better than lossless. I need it to be better than nothing is lost. What's better than that? I don't know, but I need it.
Bigger numbers. Bigger numbers must mean more better.
Who's left, Rob?
On the list, we have a question from Infinite Gary. Haven't talked to him in a little while, so there he is. John and Adam. I think that's all I wrote up for this week. It is.
All right. If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. Yes, by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Tyler and Steven for going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 132 patrons over at patreon.com, including John. So thank you to all of you.
Yes, indeed. Tyler and Steven, thank you for your PayPal donations. Patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 132 patrons over there. John, thank you for being one of them.
We also want to thank Aaron for sending Rob a movie code to check out for him.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate the movie code.
And those who send us notes of gratitude from Aaron, Karl E, Jay, Bo, Dan, Jorge, Stephen, and Adam. Thank you for thanking us.
Indeed. I'll say the names one last time. Aaron, Karl and E, Jay, Bo, Dan, Jorge, Stephen, and Adam. Thank you very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. They're very much appreciated. And a big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.